All right, this week's edition of Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Prichard, is brought to you by LeatherByDan.com. And Bruce, this is hot off the presses. We've got an even better deal than what we had before. Just because you listen to the show, if you go to LeatherByDan.com, the deal's even sweeter. Am I right?
Without a doubt. I mean, he's basically giving these belts away.
It's a custom nickel belt, 3 plates, custom, handmade leather, all to your exact specifications for how much money, Bruce?
Only $1,000. That's it.
You know what? I'm going to freestyle it. I'm going to make it even better. $9.99.
No way.
Yep. Under $1,000, a custom belt, handcrafted leather, custom to your exact specifications, a 3-plater, all nickel.
Less than $1,000.
Less than $1,000. $9.99. Where else can you beat that, man?
Custom?
Let's run through this. If you go get one of those crappy, mass-produced Chinese replicas that are on one of those Shop Zone websites, they're going to charge you like $400 or $500. You can pay a little bit more than that and get a real belt. Not a mass-produced replica, not fake leather, real, authentic dead cow, handcrafted by Dan the Man at LeatherByDan.com.
With your name on it?
With your name on it, whatever you want, man. We could get a Conradson belt. We could be the podcast tag team champions of the world if we wanted to.
We are the podcast tag team champions of the world.
Okay, we're not recognized right now because we don't have a title, but at only $9.99 each, we may need to go get a couple.
Well, but it would take, 6 months? 9 months?
Exactly what we're trying to talk about here. We're talking about record-breaking turn times. Some of Dan's competitors are charging more than $1,700 with a 6-month wait. Not Dan. Dan's under $1,000 for the same type of craftsmanship, maybe even better, and in a fraction of the time. We're talking about 10 weeks, 12 weeks. He's going to get it to you very quick. How much does shipping cost?
It's free.
But what if you don't have the whole $1,000?
He'll do payment plans.
Doesn't get any easier than this. Support the show and do us a favor. Even if you're not in the market to buy, just go look at it. You're going to be tickled. LeatherByDan.com is our longest standing supporter here on Something to Wrestle With. If you enjoy the show, do me a favor right now. Go right now, LeatherByDan.com. Just take a look. You'll be glad you did.
From the territories to Titan Towers to TNA and all points in between, he's seen and done it all. And now, he's here to share the real story behind wrestling's biggest moments, controversies, and characters. The MLW Radio Network presents Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Another beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Man, I'm fired up about this. This is the latest we've ever waited to tape a podcast ever. We have been busier than one-arm paper hangers, but we're here, and we're going to knock out all things sunny. But first, we need to take care of some business from last week. Do you have any hanging leftover little points about TNA that we didn't discuss?
I don't think I do. I don't want to say those 3 letters together again for a long, long time.
I missed one, and I'm going to come back to it next week because I don't remember what it was. But I did get a request for, I remember now. Tell me about Joker Sting. You got anything about Joker Sting?
Joker Sting was just another incarnation of Sting. That's all it was.
Give me something else.
Not going to do it.
Nothing else to share?
Nope.
What about Aces and Eights? Lots of complaints. We didn't talk about them enough. You got anything on Aces and Eights?
No, I think we shared enough.
Oh, come on. Give me something.
Nope.
Okay, so there you go. I was asked to ask you about Joker Sting and Aces and Eights. I guess we kind of covered it all. We got 6 hours of fucking TNA, man.
There you go. It's in there somewhere, I'm sure.
All right, let's get one more little piece of business about TNA out of the way. We were jerks last week, and we said...
We weren't jerks.
Okay, I was a jerk.
Okay.
I was a jerk, and I wanted to give away a Dixie Carter action figure. It blew me away that in the middle of this shitstorm, her company's falling apart all around her, and she's giving away or promoting her action figure on Twitter. To my surprise, last night on the TNA Impact show that aired, they're running a special about how you should give TNA merchandise as a Christmas present, which is timely advertising. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree with that.
What's smack dab in the middle of that promo?
A free download of the Dixie Carter theme.
It's not a rib.
No.
That's real life. But this was a rib. Last week we're
talking about sad women. this week.
The topic this week is sad women.
Yeah.
It's unfair to compare Dixie to Sunny in that regard. Oh, come on. All right, we'll get into that a little later. Right now, let's do something fun. Let's have a giveaway here on the Bruce Prichard Show. We decided last week we were going to give away a copy or a figure of the Dixie Carter action figure from TNA. It was donated to us by Court Bauer from MLW. I don't know why he has that. We should ask him that.
It's a little disturbing.
It is a little weird. There's a lot about Court that's weird, but that's the weirdest. And we're going to go ahead and give that away on the show right now. And so what we asked you to do last week is go ahead and tweet a picture of the landscape where you thought this Dixie figure belonged and use the hashtag Where's Dixie, which is the campaign they used to promote this action figure originally. And I had no influence in your pick here. You on your own picked a winner, and I'd like for you to announce who the winner is, what the picture was, and why you picked it.
Well, I'll reach deep down into the barrel here, and what do you know? Old Blue won the pony. No, that's a long, old wrestling story. I'll tell you later. Well, what do you know? Kane Prichard won the... No, he's actually texting me right now saying he doesn't want it. Okay, folks, I'm done bullshitting here. The real winner.
You know what? Those type of jokes right there, those are the type of jokes that make clowns cry.
Thank you for that. The Dixie winner, the winner of the Dixie Carter action figure is Jason Washam at Washipoo187 on Twitter. And the place...
Congratulations, Washipoo187 on Twitter. Did you pick it because of the name, or is this a funny picture?
No, I picked it because of the picture.
What is it?
It was the backside of a cow in a field, and the cow was urinating. And being a softie, as I am, I want the figure to go to a good home where it will be comfortable. And it kind of looked like the ranch where Dixie grew up there in Texas outside of Dallas, and I figured that figure would be at home being out in the pasture with the cows. So I was being sympathetic. I wanted it to be at home. I wanted it to have a good home and feel comfortable.
Well, so there you go. Congratulations, Washipoo187.
Yeah.
On your brand new Dixie Carter action figure. If you will go ahead and message the show account at Prichard Show, we'll be on the lookout for your home shipping address, and Mr. Bauer will get that to you directly. All right, Bruce, let's get into it, man. This is going to be a pretty hot topic, pretty controversial name here. Sunny. What happened when Sunny went to the WWF? And I did some research using, of course, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, but mostly her book this time. And I feel like we should give everybody kind of a quick shout out for her book. I know she is not able to plug the book right now, but she does have one available. And I did a lot of research using that. It's on Amazon. It's called A Star Shattered, The Rise and Fall of Wrestling's Diva. And it's by Tammy Sitch. And it is available on your Kindle for only $9.99 on Amazon.com. So if you need a resource companion for this, there you go. Have you read the book, Bruce?
I have not. I lived it.
You lived it.
I lived a lot of it, yeah.
Well, let's get into it. December 4th, 1994, you call her home, and she thinks the call is for Chris, who she lives with, Mr. Chris Candido. But it's actually for her, and you're asking for an audition. Do you remember this call?
I do remember. She was working down for Jim Cornette at old Smoking Mountain Wrestling.
Oh, my gosh.
And my brother Tom was also working in the area, and I'd seen Tammy. She worked as Tammy Fitch.
That's right.
Down there. Beautiful young lady. Good God. And showed the tape. Cornette had sung her praises and showed the tape to Vince, and we thought about bringing her in and doing something with her. Actually thought about using her as a broadcaster.
Yeah, so she writes in her book that she actually comes to Titan on December 7th, which is her 21st birthday, and you guys do the whole limo and Marriott treatment. And she didn't think she did very well in the audition. She actually writes that she bombs, and she blamed her inexperience with a teleprompter for some of that. But she says she still got a call a week or so later that she got the gig. she didn't think she did well, but you guys still hired her. Was it just her innate charisma, the recommendation of Jim Cornette, or she was just damn good looking?
Well, without a doubt, you can't deny her charisma.
Right.
And she had a presence, and she wasn't hard to look at all. So it's a combination of all of those things, because she, 21 years old, she's speaking to our audience.
Right.
And when you've got a big audience of teenage, adolescent males,
right,
they are going to sit there and they're going to listen to her, because they may not listen to what she says, but they're going to watch her for a while.
There you go. So in the meantime, between when she gets the call that she got the gig and the audition, she actually broke her arm working in Smoky Mountain, where she just took a bump the wrong way. So when you call her to give her the good news that she's hired, you advise her to buy some business suits and bring the receipt. Was that commonplace at the time?
Sure, yeah.
So the process is pretty simple. You just go get whatever you think's going to look good and bring the receipt. And who would that go through?
The receipt?
Yeah, like when she gets there, she
probably
just hand you the
at
receipt?
that point she'd probably either bring it to me or Kevin Dunn or something, and
you guys just get her a check from accounting and you're done.
Sure.
Okay, easy enough. So she says right here in the phone call to you that hey, she broke her arm and she's wearing a big ugly cast, and you say, we'll try to work around it, or at least that's what.
It's television, kid. We make anything work.
So she becomes Tamara Murphy. And she credits this as Vince wanting to use her real first name, but an Irish-sounding last name. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Oh, goddamn. We'll have this conversation when we talk about Michael Hayes too. You know where the name Murphy came from?
No.
There's an old television show, Murphy Brown.
Yeah.
And she was a newswoman.
Yeah.
So we took Tammy's first name, and then we took Murphy from Murphy Brown.
So she's going to host live event news, and this taping will be happening every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. She writes the WWF was going to pay her $500 per day for this, and she was still eligible to do Smoky Mountain Wrestling house shows every weekend. So she's very active and busy here. She says that Vince personally coached her up during some of the filming. Specifically, he didn't like the way she says garden when she was talking about Madison Square Garden. Is it common for Vince to be this hands-on with a talent as far as just producing the television? And would he zero in on a word like that or a pronunciation?
Without a doubt, especially a new young talent that he feels has potential, he will work with them ad nauseum, and if there's something that he feels like, we talked about before, the King's English, pal. And if they weren't pronouncing something to his satisfaction, yes, he would work with them. We sent Tony Schiavone to enunciation school to help him lose his southern drawl in the way that
enunciation school.
Yes.
Wow, that's not something you just find in the Yellow Pages, I don't think.
In Stamford, Connecticut, I think you do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I have no idea, but I know that he did it. He did go and work on his speech and work on reducing his southern drawl. I see you've done that too.
Reducing my southern drawl?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think
you're doing a hell of a job.
So. Oh my gosh, piss off. So in the Observer, it's written around this time that Candido and Fitch were being considered to recreate a Blonde Bomber-style tag team with Candido and another wrestler managed by Fitch, almost a modern-day incarnation of Ray Stevens and the Pat Patterson gimmick. Do you recall that being any sort of consideration, or was the thought always, no, we just want her?
No, actually, let me rephrase that. We wanted her,
right,
and there was interest in Chris.
Okay.
And there was no interest in the beginning of the two of them as a package. And that became apparent. They wanted to do something like that. They wanted to be a package. And
so for Meltzer to write that, it would have been stuff he got from their side more so than your side.
Who the hell knows where he got his bullshit? Or he does what he does with everything else and just sat there and make it up.
What?
But, probably sat there and said, well, I hear they're going to do this. So he sits there and makes up a narrative in his own mind. But they were coming in. There was interest in Tammy, and we wanted to do something with Tammy as a broadcaster and be able to utilize her because she was young, she was fresh, she was different. And with Chris, wanted to bring Chris in as a character and use him in some way as well. When they all got together, is what often happens, kind of like Mark Marrow and Sable. The two of them are there together. They are a couple in real life, and the idea just happens, yeah.
So there was speculation that Tammy was going to come in as an announcer because the WWF was advertising in the broadcast trade journals for new talent. Was that common back then, that you guys would run, now hiring type ads in those type of trade journals for broadcasters?
Oh, all the time.
They wound up bringing in, am I saying this right, Stephanie Wyand?
Stephanie Wyand, yes.
And from what I understand, she was a former Los Angeles radio DJ. She was actually hired from those ads. And then she began hosting WWF Mania, and she replaced Charlie
Min.
Yeah, former sportscaster from Columbus, Ohio. I don't know when we'll talk about Stephanie Wyand.
Never again.
And Charlie Min again. Can you kind of share some insider stories on either one of those names?
Wow, everybody thought we were crazy. But we did. We advertised in the trades. We had rounds of auditions. Charlie Min was I believe he was Chinese American, but he had an over-the-top delivery. He was very entertaining, and he killed us in the audition. And Vince fell in love with him, and how Vince and I would do a lot of times is we would write down our thoughts, and then we would switch.
Right.
We'd share, after the fact. And both of us liked Charlie Min. I think we were the only two that liked Charlie Min. He was just different. But he was really exciting, and he talked like this, and it was just, he was different.
Right.
He was so different for our product and everybody else that was the traditional, Mean Gene type and announcer type and in your face. He was young and different. Stephanie Wyand was a young female that had a lot of energy, but she was lost. She just was lost once she got there. She didn't grasp it. She tried really hard, but it wasn't in her. Charlie was a fan. Stephanie really wasn't a fan, and she was just doing a job and trying to play a role.
So Meltzer starts speculating in The Observer that she's going to start, she being Tammy Sitch, is going to start as an obnoxious announcer and then segue into being a heel manager later. Of course, that's everybody's natural inclination based on her work at Smoky Mountain. By the end of the year, everybody's thinking that Candido's just going to finish up in Smoky Mountain and then sign with the WWF. And it's worth mentioning, he was the NWA champion at the time. Now, obviously, this is when the NWA is not quite where the NWA was a decade before. But he's still doing indies and doing pretty well there. She does share in her book details about when she's first brought into the office to discuss their characters with her and Skip, because this Tamara Murphy live event news thing is short-lived. Can we agree?
Yeah, it was. She just wasn't. Tammy is a natural heel. She has a natural charisma, but she's a natural heel, too. She's a smart-ass. And she came across as a bitch.
Right.
She didn't intend to.
Yeah. Jim Cornette has famously said, or he described her, and she described herself as a, quote, out front cunt.
Yeah.
Just can't help it. Just a little rude, it is what it is. It's just her natural disposition.
Exactly. And you can't mask that.
Right.
So it was one of those situations where try as we may, her natural dislikability was going to come out.
So soon thereafter, you guys decide to let's look at maybe putting them together. And she suggests they were supposed to be baby faces, which I find amazing considering that you think it was just obvious from the start that she was supposed to be a heel or destined to be a heel. She describes the gimmick as being a cross between cheerleaders and superheroes, and the gimmick was supposed to be called Team Spirit. And you can actually find this in your Google machine. She had a cheerleading skirt, a cape, a tank top, and gloves to her elbows, and Chris had a singlet and a cape. They debut at a TV taping in North Carolina, and this happens only about 90 miles from where they finished up with Smoky Mountain. Do you remember the angle they used to get them out of Smoky Mountain?
I have no idea.
They killed a cat on Christmas.
Bastards.
That's real.
Bastards.
Wrestling in 1994, man. So anyway, of course, they're booed to death because they're 90 miles from where they killed the cat. So a lot of these folks are watching Smoky Mountain television and are familiar with this. So afterwards, Vince suggests, hey, you know what? Maybe you're better as heels. And he suggested that they kind of pivot to become fitness gurus full of hype and energy, kind of like Tony Little was on the old infomercials. And the name Body Donna was a combination of body and prima donna. In her book, she credits Vince with that name and their individual names, Skip and Sonny. She says she had a hand in changing the costumes to be more of a sports bra-like tank top and bike shorts, and eventually she would transition to a more revealing sports bra and tennis skirt. After they do this, kind of pivot here, they take 4 weeks worth of promos to introduce the characters to the audience. And Vince was very hands-on in filming these as well, and even acted out both parts, instructing her to be bitchy and conceited, but wanted Skip to be more overzealous and punctuated. Do you remember filming these vignettes with these particular two?
Oh, yeah. We did them in the studio, and it was exactly that. It was Tony Little with an assistant, with the bitchy little assistant, and Skip was going to be over the top, this just, health guru nut with the beautiful young assistant. Let the assistant be kind of like the distraction and the eye candy.
And it's worth mentioning that at the time when this is happening, so this would be early 95, these fitness guru infomercials are fucking huge.
They're everywhere. Every television station in America, if they didn't have Family Strokes or something, you had Tony Little on, or you had
Tybo's about to be big.
Yes.
You've got the Tony Little thing. You've got 6-minute abs. You've got the ab roller thing. You've got the thing that you would lean up. I mean, just all kinds of infomercials in America based on this type of character.
Exactly. And they were annoying as hell on the... whether it be the fitness gurus or it be Skip and Sonny. Absolutely annoying.
So you had a lot of confidence in this character as getting over as being a heel?
Yes.
So the concept, of course, being, they're going to insult the audience, tell them they're fat and they're out of shape and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And the other thing about it was, in utilizing Chris Candido, was he was a smaller guy.
Right.
But he was a hell of a worker. He was a hell of a hand. And we felt that there was a comparison to a Ray Stevens and a Pat Patterson, so that's probably where Meltzer surmises and comes up with his ideas that we had, well,
in fairness, some of that probably comes from Cornette.
Probably does. I don't know, but it wasn't accurate. And it was just simply, looking at Chris, feeling that Chris could fill that role of an aggravating little heel. And a working heel.
I don't want to go down this Meltzer thing again this early in the show, especially. But I love you say, especially since it wasn't accurate. He fucking wrote it was going to be him and another blonde guy managed by Tammy, and he did this in December, months before Tom is there. So,
but my point is that was never the idea.
Well, he's a goddamn prophet. It happened.
Well, maybe he's a guy. No, he guesses, and 50% of the time he's right.
Here we go. Okay,
but he guesses. It's based on guessing and bullshit. None of it is based in fact.
So early on...
I'm sorry, he was there for all those fucking meetings when we discussed their goddamn ideas.
And Barry finally didn't lose at SummerSlam, which is a big deal. He'd always been enhancement talent, and he finally doesn't lose at SummerSlam in 95. And she takes credit for Barry getting his very first T-shirt. In her book, she kind of pats herself on the back, Barry Horowitz style, for getting Barry his first T-shirt. Whose idea was it to get Barry out of this lovable loser spot for once.
Pat Patterson.
It's a great idea.
Oh, it was a great idea. Worked like a charm. What would happen if the horror wins and he beats the Skippy and oh my God, nobody believe it. I love that I make the French Canadian Pat Patterson sound like Luigi making some pizza. Hey. Oh well.
They move into an angle where Louis Spicolli was portraying the character Rad Radford, and he wanted to join the Body Donnas, but of course isn't in the shape to do so. Louis, not necessarily known for his physique, but a hell of a hand. And here we go. Let's get it in early. I don't know when we'll talk about him again. So tell me about Louis Spicolli.
Louis Spicolli was a young guy from California, and we had used Louis Spicolli as an enhancement talent back in the days when we used to have guys come in and work with the stars as enhancement talent to put them over on our weekly TV shows. And Spicolli was one of those guys who was always around. Really nice kid, and had this idea and pitched me the idea of Rad Radford and a grunge rocker, and we gave it a shot. Brought him in, man. He was just, young guy. Let's try this out. So, two young guys, and give them a story and see where it goes.
Louis Spicolli ultimately passed away when he was working for WCW. He had brief stints with all three companies, and I believe he was discovered on the AAA When Worlds Collide pay-per-view. I could be making that up. That's just from memory.
Discovered by who?
WWF.
No.
Okay, just as an enhancement guy.
We'd used Louis as an enhancement guy for years.
Okay, so
out in California, and I always liked Louis.
Why did he end? Well, I mean, not the death. I mean, why did his run with you end?
He got out of shape really bad, and he had a problem.
Somas.
Yeah.
So he has a brief stint with ECW, and then has a stint with WCW, and then ultimately passes away in his sleep. I think he choked to death on his own vomit.
Yeah, it's sad, because he was a really, really good young man.
And for a long time, Tommy Dreamer actually called his finisher the Spicolli driver, in tribute to him. One of the more well-liked guys in the locker room. Would you agree with that?
Oh, without a doubt.
It's a shame that we never got to see what he was really capable of doing in the business. One of the more tragic tales.
And people forget how young he was. He was really, really young.
Yeah.
When he started. I think he started when he was like 17, 18 years old.
If you're not familiar with Louis Spicolli, throw it in your Google machine. Watch some of his old stuff. You'll be happy you did.
And he based his original name off of, Jeff Spicolli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High for you kids. Were you even born when Fast Times at Ridgemont High was out?
I'm 35, dude. Come on. Then one day during a match, Skip was being dominated, and all of a sudden, a guy with the same haircut and a similar build in identical gear replaces him and wins the match. Zip is born, and this character is portrayed by Dr. Tom Prichard. And Sonny, in her book, writes that you begged to be the one to tell Dr. Tom about his new position, and most of all, his new haircut.
That I begged?
You wanted to be the one to give Tom this great news that not only do you have a gig now on TV with the WWF, but also...
Well, no, Tom had been coming in at the time, and Tom had really long...
Oh, yeah.
Brown, curly hair.
Oh, yeah.
Tom loved his hair.
And he was known for it.
He was known for it.
It was a trademark deal for him.
He loved his hair. And
is it your idea to cut that shit off?
Well, it was simply an idea looking at... Hang on. Oh, Jesus Christ. See, this is a kind of bullshit.
Whoa.
You just rolled your eyes. Oh, my, here we go.
You defending it. I know you in real life, motherfucker. You loved getting to call Tom and say,
"No, I
great
didn't.
news, buddy."
Well, no, I did. Something just fell on me.
It was Brother Love.
Brother Love just fell from the heavens upon my head. But the whole idea was simply looking at, it was two things. Looking at a way to do something more with the Body Donnas,
right,
with Skip and Sonny. And having a position, for a new tag team and doing something with them. Tom didn't have anything at the time. And it was like, okay.
No, it worked.
Either he, goes on and does something else, or, you know what, we've got a spot. Tom and Chris were friends in real life.
It's from Smoky Mountain.
From Smoky Mountain. And
right.
Tom always thought the world of Chris. Loved Chris like a brother. Probably loves him more than me. But there was a connection there. There was a friendship there. And Chris looked at Tom like a mentor.
Right.
So with all of this, there were other issues going on with the relationship with Tammy and Chris and so on and so forth, and Chris confiding in Tom. The team behind the scenes was already there.
Right.
So the way to make them a team is when you look at them, same body type, same size, same kind of look, and you can't have Chris all of a sudden grow long curly brown hair. But you can give Tom a brand new life and a brand new character by having him cut his hair, bleach it blonde to look like Skip.
You realize I'm not Tom. You don't have to sell me on it. I like the idea.
Well, no, I'm. But my point is, everybody's. I'm waiting for the 3 words.
Was that a rib?
No, it was not a rib, and it was a way to get him. It's 4 words. You're right. I was counting. But my shirt is not a rib. You can get that at Pro Wrestling Tees / Bruce Prichard.
All right. If it's not a rib, let's run through this. She writes in her book that the haircut goes down in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
It does.
And you bring a video camera.
Well, that was for my own personal enjoyment, though.
Fuck you.
That was for my own No, hang on.
You said this was not a rib.
It was not a rib.
You're grinning ear to ear right now about telling your brother he's going to have to cut his hair off, and you're going to film the haircut.
No, I filmed the haircut strictly for my own pleasure.
Yeah, to show at family gatherings.
No one's ever seen it.
Do you still have the tape?
Somewhere.
We've got to find a way to put that online.
I've got to find it. It may be, you know what? It may be up in the boxes of tapes that are up there in the WWF warehouse.
Well, I'll get them for you.
But the thing is pitching this to him and looking at it, and he's thinking the same thing. Oh, this is a fucking rib. And I go back
It is a rib.
It is not a rib.
You bring the fucking camera.
No. Shooting the haircut, I just wanted that for posterity. I wanted that to have.
You did it to fuck with it.
No. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to fuck with you. I'm going to give you a job, and we're going to make a character out of you. But that's not a rib.
I'm not arguing any of that. Filming the haircut is a rib.
That was for posterity.
That's a rib. Okay,
it was not a rib.
Let's move along.
But again, people all think it was, and people think, oh my God, why would you do that to Tom? It was to be able to give him a job and give him a position in a major company.
I'm not arguing anything.
And make a character out of him and give him new life.
Filming the haircut was a rib. WrestleMania.
Wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
You know I would. After WrestleMania 12, with the Body Donnas.
Oh, I'm sorry, side story. So Tom comes back with the haircut and it bleached, and I'll never forget it, and comes walking in, and Bret Hart is there. And Tom walks up and goes, hey, how you doing? And shakes his hand. And Bret, who knows Tom, and Tom had been there for a while with the long hair, introduces himself. Hey, how you doing, Bret Hart? Did not recognize Tom. So at that point, I knew, okay, good, this is great, because people aren't going to pick it up right away, and it's a new character, and it was good.
I like it. Thank you for the story.
Hey, you're welcome. That's what I do.
After WrestleMania 12, with the Body Donnas winning the tag titles from the Godwins, the WWF decides to push Sunny individually a little more. So they send her to Florida with Rich Frida for a bikini photo shoot and later a music video. She did some magazine covers at the time and even a Monday Night Raw t-shirt where they put a pool cue between her breasts, and she's kind of chalking the cue at the top, and it says, I like it raw. It was one of those old school photograph of a person on a t-shirt. Terrible t-shirts they did at the time. Eventually they even
It's sold.
I have no doubt. Eventually they did a VHS release for Sunny as well, and it blew up. Interesting to note here, she makes mention in her book that nobody gave her a script for the voiceover of that video. Can you imagine a scenario in 2016 where they have a DVD release and there's not a script for the talent?
I'm sure there was a guideline. There were probably bullet points and shit they gave her. But, yeah, I couldn't. To answer your question, I couldn't imagine them without having every single word, pause, phrase, everything laid out for them now.
Yeah, even a breath and a sigh would probably be there now. She's really blowing up in 96, and she makes Extra, Entertainment Tonight, Access, Inside Edition, even singled out on MTV. Do you remember how the singled out appearance comes about? Does that ring a bell to you?
God, she was the hottest thing in the business in a lot of respects at the time. And she was the most downloaded celebrity on AOL.
Okay, now let's talk about that. I was hoping you would bring that up. Because when this first is reported, when you guys first start kind of championing that, Meltzer claims bullshit and says that.
Of course he does, because he's got all that data.
Okay.
He was there.
I'm just saying, he makes mention of it and says that it's all just hype. Let me get it right. The stories about Sunny being the most downloaded celebrity and Warrior having the #1 comic book in the world are all hype. I saw a list of the top 10 downloaded celebrities, and Sunny wasn't even on the list. Pamela Anderson Lee and Jenny McCarthy types dominate. The Warrior book is an even bigger work, and the most major comic book stores aren't even carrying it, and it isn't even produced by a major distributor. So based on the fact that you guys were probably claiming both, doesn't it lend itself to Meltzer kind of thinking, okay, this is probably bullshit, since he knows the Warrior thing's a total work?
Dave Meltzer knows that.
Yeah, give me anything else.
Our numbers came from AOL.
Yeah, she mentions that she was even a presenter for AOL when they had an award.
Our numbers came from AOL that she was, and Pam Anderson had been #1. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Sunny's shit blows up.
And it's worth mentioning here that when we're saying most downloaded celebrity, they're talking about one particular image.
There you go.
One particular image was downloaded more than 1 million times, which is not a super huge shit.
It was at the time.
Yeah, 1 million people are going to listen to this episode.
Right.
But back then...
Because we're the tag team champions of podcasts.
Well, it's not a lie. We can't deny it.
No.
So, you guys were rightfully so kind of strapping the rocket ship to Sunny here.
It happened. I mean, without really too much, there wasn't a whole lot of planning looking at this thing going, okay, we're going to make Tammy this super hot desire, everyone's desire type thing. It just happened, and we jumped on it.
Let me just, 2 things I want to ask you about here. I want to come back to the pool cue, but she mentions in her book, and
You've been doing this ever since you've been doing research on this. Folks, I'll be sitting there, and Conrad is writing his own book on Sunny, preparing for this thing, and all of a sudden he'll just start laughing and will tickle the hell out of himself. And I'm like, what? He goes, I'm just going to my Sunny stuff. It's going to be good. So go ahead. I'm sorry. You're laughing again.
She writes in her book she was often referred to as the, quote, female Hulk Hogan due to my overwhelming popularity. You ever hear somebody say some stupid shit like that before? I
never heard that one, but.
Full disclosure, Sunny was my teenage crush. Man,
I know.
In 1996, I turned 15 and woo, roll tide. I was all about me some Sunny. Shout out to Mr. Ziegler listening right now. And Mr. Damian Darling listening right now. This pool cue that you mentioned a minute ago, or that I made mention a minute ago, they did a couple of vignettes on Raw in 96 of her in a bubble bath and of her at a pool table. And eventually...
And of her on a piano.
All of that becomes part of a photo shoot for the first Raw magazine. And... they sold t-shirts off of it. So this was the first time they started to go a little more risque, so to speak. And you shared something with me recently that I did not realize. Where was all that stuff shot?
That was shot in the home of Vincent Kennedy McMahon and Linda McMahon. Their home. The home of the McMahons, or as we affectionately known it, there were a few of us that called it Casa de McMahon.
That fascinates
kind of like
me.
The Conradison, that was Casa de McMahon to me.
Well, that fascinates me that this whole time, because I think a lot of people who are my age are familiar with that photo shoot and those vignettes, and you just assume that's some location. You don't think that's Vince's house.
Vince's house is a location in and of itself. I use that house for so many things. It's
what
crazy.
else did you use it for?
I buried the Bushwhackers out there. I did $1 Million Man vignettes there. I did Mr. Perfect vignettes there.
Which Mr. Perfect vignette would you have done there?
The darts,
okay,
and the pool table one, the pool one where he sunk the crazy shot. Like I said, I shot.
Was that the same pool table, and I didn't put that together?
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
sure was. I buried the Bushwhackers before they got all their landscaping done because they were the first ones in that area, and they had a lot of just wooded area around them. So I used that as the woods for the Bushwhackers. Gene Okerlund looking for them back there, and I hit them in piles of leaves and everything. Did a lot of $1 Million Man stuff there. We shot. They did Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous there with Randy Savage and Robin Leach. DiBiase, we did Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous there too.
This is fascinating to me.
So we got several Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous there with Savage and with DiBiase out of the same place. They shot it differently.
Are you saying that Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was a work?
No. What? What would make you think that?
Let's talk about some more rumors and innuendo. We've been this whole time and we haven't said it yet. We got to get our shit.
All this shit is rumor and innuendo, folks.
She's summoned to Vince McMahon's office with Jim Ross and Lisa Wolf there, and
what a crew!
Right?
Oh my God!
Vince tells her that Playboy called. She's 23 at the time and thinks her dad would roll over in his grave if she did something like that. So she turned it down on the spot. Do you remember this talk?
I wasn't in on that talk, but I definitely remember the push to have Sonny in Playboy, yes.
The push coming from their side or your side?
Both.
Really?
They came to us. And it was something that Vince initially was against.
Right.
Vince didn't want to associate with Playboy, felt that it would tarnish our brand.
Right.
You know, we're
wholesome family.
Yes, exactly. However, at the time, there was a push to be a little bit more adult-oriented.
Right.
And frankly, there wasn't really any interest prior to this. You know, believe it or not, I know it's hard to believe, but there wasn't a big push to get Moolah in Playboy or
Bull Nakano or any of those.
Yeah. Well, Bull, there was a little bit of interest.
Oh, sure, I'd be in. Yeah.
So, you know, this was the first time that we had, you know, got a hot 23-year-old that there was a desire to see her.
Oh, yeah.
Sans clothes.
Sure.
So it was something, why don't we try this? And Playboy of the gentlemen's magazines was probably the classiest of the bunch.
Oh, yeah. No beef shots. Hey, chat me up. What do you think the payday on that would have been? I know you don't know.
At that time?
Yeah.
Probably a couple $100,000, several $100,000.
Cool. I wouldn't have had any sort of framer.
See that, folks? I gave numbers. I gave you a number. You asked me?
It was a speculative number.
Okay.
So let's talk about this. You guys do a deal where she turns on the Body Donnas and pretends she's in love with Phineas, and then Billy Gunn kisses her. So the Godwins drop the belts to the Smoking Guns, and now that makes 3 championship teams she's managed. And now she has several minutes of what she would call unscripted and just ad-lib promo time to apologize to Phineas, and he eventually says, "I love you," and she smacks him hard. Of course, Hillbilly Jim and the Godwins chase away the Smoking Guns, and they do the big spot where they slop Sonny, and it wound up on the cover of the WWF magazine. Lots of rumors about what was in that bucket, but this wasn't the only time they did this slop spot with Sonny. They did it on the house show loops for the next month or so, and she wrote in her book that it was a combination of leftover salad from catering mixed with bread and water. She says she had heard the rumors of what the guys might do with the bucket, so she kept the bucket in the locker room until the match. You were there. Lots of rumors online about what went down in that bucket.
What bucket are we talking about?
The slop bucket.
What time? Which one?
Okay. This is what I want to hear. Okay. Chat me up. Do you have any inside knowledge of any sort of bodily
there's rumor
fluids?
And there's innuendo. But I can tell you for TV and for that, there was probably just some leftover stuff from catering and
TV
water
was legit, but on the house
and
shows.
Milk. Usually put milk in it, made it look good. But there was rumor and innuendo that guys used to place other things in there.
They would use it as a toilet?
I've heard that, never saw it, but I've heard that. I've heard the same rumors, yes. The guys used to urinate in the bucket and poop in the bucket and what have you.
Anything else?
Like what?
Okay.
I don't know.
Any names associated that you'd like to throw out there that were alleged providers of said excrement?
No.
Okay. Did they do this 6 times? Or did they do it just 1, 2, 3 times? Or
I have no idea. Really and true, no. And I say this seriously.
That was a Sean Waltman joke, Bruce. Let's keep it moving.
I say this seriously because, Vince is kind of a, believe it or not, he can be a stickler on certain things.
Don't poop in the bucket.
No, God damn it. Stop shitting in the bucket. There will be no piss in the bucket. God damn it, pal. There's a urinal over there. And wash your hands. You saw. Good God. He touched something. He was a stickler on things like that for people to be professional in that way. And as sick as Vince can be sometimes, and his own rumor and innuendo, he was pretty good about that.
I love that you feel the need to publicly announce,
no shitting in the bucket. God damn it, guys. A little restraint.
Eventually, they pair her with Ron Simmons as Farouk Assad. And she wrote in her book that they wanted them to act like a couple and even tongue kiss on camera. She says she wasn't racist, but wasn't attracted to him, so she refused to do it. Poke holes in this. Clearly the idea, I don't know. Who wrote this shit?
The idea, man.
Let's set the backstory. Ron Simmons, WCW World Heavyweight Champion, All-American at Florida State, had his jersey retired.
Badass.
Was actually in the running for a Heisman Trophy as a defensive player. He didn't finish high, but he finished ranked, for that position.
Jersey's retired.
Jersey's retired, yeah. Legit badass. And the first ever Black World Champion in the history of pro wrestling, and now you guys are going to get him and put him in the dumbest fucking gimmick in the history of gimmicks.
It was a great gimmick, and here's the reason.
What was the gimmick? Let's hear
Farouk.
But what is it?
It was a badass.
Well, yeah, but he's wearing this blue dumb shit.
Well, there's a reason for that.
What is it?
The reason for that was to hide his receding hairline and to camouflage him and help him make him look younger. That was the reasoning behind it.
Okay.
And that was actually discussed and done with all of that in mind with Ron and his wife. Here's a great story. So, don't know when we'll talk about him again. Actually, we will talk about Ron Simmons again because there's so many great stories. But Ron Simmons was a guy, kind of like Undertaker, that I was a huge fan of. I loved Ron's work. Loved his look, loved his promos, and I was always trying to get Ron to come over. And I had on my calendar every year when Ron Simmons' contract was coming up. And I would call him I'd call him 6 months before, and then I'd call him at about 4 months before.
Just so we're clear, you're tampering.
No, not tampering. I would call here because I had it written down. Dude, exactly what I could say and when. So 6 months, say, hey, Ron, how you doing, man? It's Bruce Prichard. I'm just calling to see how the hell you're doing. Everything good? Okay, great, man. Hey, here's my number. I just want to make sure that you've got it, and I hope all's going well. If you ever need anything, give me a shout. 4 months out, I would remind him of that, pretty much the same type phone call. And 90 days out, when I knew that he had an option to be able to explore other options, I would say, hey, I just want to, first of all, know if you have an option in your contract where you might be able to speak to someone else. If you can, I'm here. I'd love to speak to you. And for the first 2-3 years, whatever it was, that was the extent of the conversations. Hey, Bruce, how you doing? Damn. Nice, casual conversations. Well, and then it came. Bruce, what you got in mind? Well, are you interested in coming in? Yeah, I may be. All right. Son of a bitch. Hold the phone. I'll call you right back. Go in and say, Vince, Ron Simmons wants to talk. Can he talk? Yep. Had him send, the thing that shows me that he could talk and he could negotiate and so on and so forth.
So he would have to fax you his contract.
Oh yeah, we had to have that. Yeah. I mean, legally, I didn't do shit without having that. Where does he live? Atlanta. Let's go. And called Ron and said, hey man, we're coming to you. And this was, JJ, I believe, was in talent relations at the time, and we told no one. Because this was something it was just one of those, it's kind of like Taker in a way. I'd always just been a fan, followed him. Steve Austin, same thing. I'd followed Steve since Dallas. And we got on a plane, and we think we're being, really cool. We say, okay, let's meet at the Marriott. All the WCW guys were gone. They were out on tour. So we said, shit, we just meet right there at the Marriott at the airport. Nobody's going to be coming through there because pretty much all WCW people, they're out doing TV or whatever the hell they were doing at the time. Why
would he have been home if they're all on tour?
Because he was off, and it was during a time he didn't think they were going to renew his contract. So they weren't using him.
I got you.
So again, now I want to talk, and they're not using me. Got this period in my contract. So we get there, and we get just to be safe, we get a private room in the back of the restaurant, and Ron shows up with his wife, and Vince and I are sitting in the back room, and Ron comes in, and he's laughing. Yeah, goddamn, I just ran into Ric Flair and Art Anderson in the lobby. And we're like, what? And I was like, yeah, Flair and Arn were there with Kevin Green.
Yeah.
And they were there working out with Kevin Green for some match that they had in WCW. And so we go out, and there's me and Vince and Flair and Arn and Kevin Green and Ron Simmons and Lottie. I was like, damn.
When you say go out, you see him in the lobby or Flair's at the hotel bar?
No, he's at the hotel restaurant having lunch.
Yeah.
And they're right there in front of God and everybody. And so our kayfabe meeting...
Not so
kayfabe. So we had to move quick. But it was one of those situations. That was all discussed with Ron and his wife. And again, the idea behind the headgear was to make Ron look younger.
What about them gladiator pants?
It was just an outfit they had for him. It was something they came up with, creative services. We quickly got away from that. I mean, he did that maybe 6 months.
Why Farouk Assad?
Wanted to give him a different name.
Just so you could own it?
Yeah.
It just seems like it kind of diminishes his star power if you change his name.
Did it diminish Cassius Clay's?
What a fucking terrible analogy.
Why?
It just is.
Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali? Ron Simmons to Farouk Assad? And by the way, that was the analogy given, so... That's kind of weird.
That's how Ron explained it, or how Vince explained it to Ron?
Yeah.
Wow. That's not racist at all. Hey,
It's not.
He would have gotten a guaranteed contract at that time, 1996, right? It would feel like this would be guaranteed contract time.
It was the downside guarantee, yeah.
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 Okay.
Actually, yes. Yes, 100% yes.
Did he have any sort of... Do you tell his wife right there at lunch, hey, we're going to have you make out with Sonny?
Without a doubt.
And you guys...
We laid it all out up front. We laid out the whole thing with Sonny and that we wanted to allude to a relationship. And this would be very controversial.
How are you alluding to a relationship if they're tongue kissing? That seems like more than a illusion.
Well, we let them know that it would be more than a manager relationship, and that we wanted to allude to a relationship.
His wife was cool with it?
Cool is an interesting word. She signed off on it, yeah. I don't know that she was totally cool with it.
Right.
But she signed off with it, and she was not going to kill him if he did it.
Well, let's talk about who she did kiss. Let's talk about Shawn Michaels. We're going to get here eventually. Might as well, huh? What do you think?
Go ahead.
She wrote in her book that Shawn wasn't the rude guy that we may have heard about. At least he wasn't with her. He was very nice, and she claims she had a crush on him since she was a kid. But ironically, I don't know that you've even seen this, she wrote into a wrestling magazine in 1986 about her obsession with Marty Jannetty. Did you know that?
No.
Back when she was a fan, she actually wrote, it's in the back pages of one of those wrestling magazines, just like the fan letters. And the title is, Wants to Marry Marty Jannetty. First of all, I would like to compliment you on your magazine. It is one of the best. I've been a WWF fan for about 4 years. One Saturday morning, I decided to watch the AWA on TV. I'd never been interested in the AWA until I saw Marty Jannetty. I think he is the most gorgeous guy in the world. The problem is I cannot find any centerfolds, articles, or color posters of him in any wrestling magazine. Please tell me if he is married. I hope he isn't, because I want him. Tammy Sitch, Old Bridge, New Jersey.
I know you want me. Oh, what?
That's all
I know.
Okay.
I know you want me.
Anyway, there's a skit on TV planned where Shawn was going to act like he was going to kiss her and then diss her, quote unquote, right as they left the air. But once they were off the air, with her prior consent, he kissed her for real, and they basically made out in the middle of the ring with him laying on top of her in a scene that Meltzer described in his newsletter as Shawn, quote unquote, basically having sex with her. Afterwards, here's what she writes in her book. I had a pretty good idea where this was going and what his intentions were, and I was right. Later that evening, he pulled me into an empty locker room and kissed me and felt me and groped me. And then, like a high school kid, he fucked me. Yep, he banged me. Right there in the locker room. It was so dirty and so not allowed within the crew, and that made it even better. Oh my God, it was mind-blowing sex, and that was the beginning of the love affair that would lead to my broken heart. We were all over each other. We had sex everywhere and anywhere for every show. In empty locker rooms, vacant bathrooms, broom closets, electrical closets, production trucks, and even in Vince's personal private locker room. The only people who knew were the members of the clique and eventually Vince. Surprisingly, Vince actually approved. He had a strict rule back then about members of the crew not getting involved romantically, but he approved of us. That became apparent to me at one particular TV taping when Vince was behind Shawn and I in line for catering. He leaned in and asked, so how are we doing? With a clear emphasis on the we. Okay, Vinnie Mac, you caught us red-handed. It wasn't uncommon for Shawn and me to go at it 4 times in one day at a TV taping and a couple more times at night in our hotel. Members of the clique were designated to, quote-unquote, watch the door for whatever the locker room we decided to occupy. Usually it was Sean Waltman, the 1-2-3 kid. I was still on the road with Chris Candido, keeping up the charade, so no one knew about Sean and me, especially Chris. Even though we were just cohabitating, I didn't see any reason to upset him. This feels really, really weird to read in print in her book. but I want your kind of take on what she wrote there.
Well, obviously I never saw them having sex. There were rumor and innuendo all over the place about her relationship with Sean.
Where do you first hear it?
Oh, God, I don't know. But, I mean, everybody was talking about it. It wasn't like they were hiding it. I mean, she probably thinks they were hiding it well. It's like the guy that goes out and sneaks that 12-pack in the middle of the day and thinks nobody can smell the beer on him and knows that he's been out drinking. Everybody suspected it, and there were a lot of rumor and innuendo about it, and they didn't hide their affection in public. It was very obvious. And the general sentiment of the locker room and everybody else was more of not, oh my God, they're over there fucking, was poor Chris.
Right.
Because it just put Chris in a bad light and it put him in a horrible, awkward position.
Yeah.
If he bows up, he's bowling up, with Sean and everybody, and Sean was the man.
He's out of a job.
That's his fear. He's out of a job, and he's got, and in his mind, he's got to fight everybody, I guess. And on the other side of it, it's it's embarrassing and demoralizing as a man that your girlfriend that you're living with is, running around with another man, denying it to your face, and everybody else knows and is seeing it, and she's denying it to your face. So he was in a really tough quandary there. He definitely suspected it and definitely heard the rumors and definitely was internally battling it constantly on a daily basis.
I feel bad for him.
Oh, felt horrible. Jesus Christ, being there, you felt horrible for him. Because you want to shake him.
But he's in a bad spot. Like you said, what can he do?
Well, he could have walked away from her.
Sure.
He could have walked away from the situation.
But as far as most dudes listening to this will be like,
I'll go kick his ass.
Can't do that.
You want to confront the guy.
Yeah.
And you're in a bad situation. It's at work. It's the star of the show, and the star of the show is letting everybody know, don't fuck with me. So he's just in a lose-lose situation. The only thing that he could have done, in my opinion, was walk away from her and say, hey, you know what, man, go be happy next and move on. He was so in love with her, just head over heels in love with her, that she could have, she probably could have,
She actually wrote about that. She says, you're probably wondering if Chris ever knew about the affair I had with Sean. I can honestly say I don't know. He never once brought it up to me, never once even questioned it. He never once asked me where I was for hours at night in a hotel while he waited on me up in our room. He never once questioned who I went to Jamaica with. He never once accused me of anything. Do I think he knew? Yes.
He knew. He definitely knew. And it ate him up.
Did any of the guys talk to him about it?
Yes.
Paul Bear in a shoot interview says he never got along with Sonny, and this was the primary reason. He felt bad for Chris and would try to talk him into handling things differently. Do you remember anybody else kind of taking him aside and having a talk like that?
Well, my poor brother, had to live it because he was teaming with Chris at the time. So he was the one having to deal with Chris's emotions on the other side.
Right.
And so he dealt with it quite a bit. And it was, what's the thing? Oh, it's one of those deals where, just poor Chris, man. He was in between a rock and a hard place. And again, the fact that he did nothing is people got to the point where they stopped feeling sorry for him and were kind of like, okay, dumbass. If you're not going to do anything, you're going to let this little girl run all over you and do this shit in your face, then you don't deserve anybody to feel bad for you. because you're letting it happen, and you're not doing anything about it. You're not either kicking her to the curb or confronting him or just something, anything. But nothing basically made the situation worse.
Right.
For him and the way that guys looked at him. And then it became the viewpoint of Sonny and Sean, kind of like, well, the boyfriend doesn't care. Why should we care?
Yeah. No, I get it. In her book, she details a big vacation they took together where she claims Sean had Vince give her the time off to take a vacation with him to Jamaica. But what I want to discuss here is what comes from her being there for him and taking care of him. Not necessarily the vacation after, but what led up to her taking care of him. He was beat up. This is going to Syracuse, October of 95. This is now an internet legendary story where he had an issue with some Marines in a bar. Can you clear up what happened to the best of your knowledge with that incident?
What, the Marines in the bar?
Yeah.
There are a lot of different stories from that night, and the general consensus is Sean got his ass kicked by allegedly 4 to 6 Marines in a bar outside of Syracuse.
That's right.
Okay. And, they beat the shit out of him. They did a hell of a number on him. He ended up in the hospital. He was in the hospital for a few days. And that was the situation that led to him vacating the Intercontinental title due to the concussion and the...
To Dean Douglas.
To Dean Douglas, right. And, yeah, Sean was in a bad way. But he had been out with, I think, Bulldog and 1, 2, 3 Kid.
That's right.
And everybody was messed up. And Sean got beat up pretty bad. It was a messed up deal.
So supposedly Bulldog comes and gets her from her hotel room where she's sleeping, obviously with Chris, and says, hey, Sean's hurt. He's been beat up. She spends a bunch of time at the hospital right by his side taking care of him. And so then he offers to take her on vacation. She gets the time off from Vince, or Sean actually arranges that. And she goes into ridiculous detail about this. This is almost embarrassing. I know that I'm just a horrible person for sharing this, but she wrote it, so I'm going to ask about what you think about her sharing this. By the 3rd day, we were both so sore that we had to take a break. We were having sex 10 times a day, all day, every day. Up until then and ever since then, Sean is the best partner I ever had. He just knew what to do, and he was so sensual while he did it. We made love like champs. He did have this one small, strange fetish, though. He liked to bend me over the bathroom counter and watch me as he did me from behind while I was applying ruby red lipstick over and over, just applying thick coats until I looked like Joker from Batman. I never really understood what he got out of it, but it turned him on something fierce and got him rock hard. Can you believe somebody would write this?
Yeah, I have no comment on that.
This is a fucking married guy of many, many years.
Yeah.
And she wrote all this.
Yeah, I don't, yeah.
Can you defend this? This
no,
feels like...
I can't.
I go from feeling kind of sad about, man, look at what happened to... And then I read this and it's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I just don't think there's any need for that stuff.
I feel bad even saying that, but I can't believe this is a thing, man.
Well, the only thing I can say to that is that was Shawn Michaels of then, and but again, because he does have kids, and I empathize with that, and I empathize with the man that he is now, and the man that he is now, and the man that he was then, are, in my opinion, are
no. There's
two different
nothing wrong
people.
with what he's doing here. I'm not judging.
No, I'm not either. I'm just saying the fact that she wrote it and put it out there for the world, and I just kind of like, God
that's
damn,
some super
why?
private. What are you doing?
Right, and
this is not for.
And those are moments that you just what you said were private that you hope would remain private.
Wow. So let's follow up with something wrestling related for a minute.
But also to that fact, on the aftermath of that, when they came back, she walked around the dressing rooms with pictures of them in Jamaica and showed everybody.
Serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was another one of those, okay, hey, Chris, where did you think she was all this time? And she's showing everybody pictures.
Mm.
So it wasn't like, well, there's a question. It wasn't rumored innuendo. There wasn't suggestions. It was she was showing pictures to everyone.
I found this to be a little off-putting, too. She somewhat blames this vacation on her struggles with alcohol in the book. She writes, one night, when Sean was ordering his regular Dewar's and soda, I told him I'd have one, too. He looked at me confused, but you don't drink, are you sure? I told him yes, and that one drink wouldn't kill me. After all, we were on vacation, and this was a vacation of a lifetime. So I had my first drink, ever, at 23 years old, a Dewar's and soda. It was Sean's drink, it was the Click's drink, it was Vince's drink. Just one drink, then two, then three. I don't know how many I had, but I had a really good buzz going, and I wasn't falling over myself drunk. The next morning, I felt fine, no hangover at all. And I figured that since I didn't get crazy drunk and I didn't get sick afterwards, that I might as well have more fun on the trip and keep drinking. What harm could it do, right? Wrong. These few casual drinks on a vacation at 23 years old were the beginning of the end for me, as you'll read later. So she's kind of half-assed blaming. It's just weird to me. I became an alcoholic because I drank the drink that Vince McMahon drinks.
Well,
and that's the Click drinks.
Vince didn't drink soda with the scotch.
No.
He drank double Dewar's on the rocks.
It's still just interesting to me.
It's a cop-out.
It's super weird. She writes how she helped Sean decorate and design the house he was building in Texas, and that he asked her to move in. She didn't move in, so he broke up with her at the television convention in Las Vegas. And shortly thereafter, she writes that he met the woman who would become his wife, got married, and had kids. And she openly wonders and wishes if this could have been her life in her book. It seems really, really weird to me to share all that personal information and then say, I wonder if I could have had his kids. And it's a dude who's been married for well over a decade. What are you doing?
Yeah, well, I think we can all agree that she has had a challenged life.
Let's talk about Bret Hart. This is something that got a lot of folks fired up. Sean, after he breaks off the relationship, does a promo when he's not necessarily in the best position in his life. And he's feuding with Bret, and he makes a mention of sunny days. That caused some heat, and we all know what happened with Montreal and the backstage hair pulling incidents and all that stuff. She writes in her book, for all of 96 and some of 97, I was the only girl on the road, so I had my own locker room. In many of the venues we worked at the time, there would be a small backstage area, usually only with two locker rooms, one for me and then the other for all of the boys. Bret Hart hated that, and he started using my locker room every night. There was no way he was squeezing into a room with 20 other guys. Wasn't happening. So when I would change, he would leave. When he would change, I would leave. In between those times, if I wasn't off somewhere screwing Sean, we had some really good conversations and became very good friends. And she kind of says that that's kind of where it ended. And Sean, who she was dating, hated that they shared this locker room. And it was mostly because of his situation or feelings with Bret. And she did say that once Bret kissed her, but that's it. Nothing else happened. And I find this interesting. Besides, I had too much respect for his family to disgrace them like that.
So we kissed, but I had too much. I don't get it.
And I have too much respect for his family to do that, to disgrace them. By the way, Sean liked to do me from behind while I put lipstick on. What the fuck? This is a crazy person. Can we agree?
I think we can agree on that.
I mean, I'm a big fan of her television persona, but this is crazy. Like, what the hell?
I think so.
When did you first hear of any sort of Bret and Sonny rumor?
The sunny days comment?
It hadn't been murmured backstage at all at that point.
Not that I'd heard, no.
Wow.
Because I remember when the comment was made, afterwards, Bret being upset, I'm like, what the hell is he all pissed off about?
Right.
Because I hadn't heard it up until that point. But I wasn't on the road. All I did was TVs at that point, so it was...
In September of 96, they take her off the road, and she says it's because they're going to give her a production staff contract, and she's now going to be working directly under Kevin Dunn, and her salary, she writes, was $100,000 per year, and she got an expense account. She wouldn't have to pay for anything on the road anymore, and she also got first-class airfare, which I assume had to be a super heat situation. She says, every time we were on a plane, there were only 4 people flying in first class: Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and me. The rest of the crew flew coach. That sound right to you?
I don't know about the first class airfare.
First class airfare is still a big deal now.
It is a big deal. And for that, I cannot imagine. Well, see, I can't imagine them doing that from the standpoint to protect her.
Right.
So I don't know. I didn't see that contract. I don't know, but I would say that was highly unlikely. Luger used to talk about how he had first-class airfare, and Luger didn't have first-class airfare.
So that's just, but it is one of the holy grail things of wrestling.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, you get first-class airfare, that's a major check mark.
This expense account is a big deal, and she was really excited about it. And she gives an example. She says, see, when you're on the road 300 days a year paying your own expenses, and you can easily spend 30% of your income to live on the road between hotels, rental cars, gas, tolls, food, and, of course, liquor. At the end of the year, you have to fork over another 30% to Uncle Sam. So a wrestler making $100,000 per year is really only taking home around $40,000. And she remembered writing checks to the IRS for $30,000 for years, and it sucked big time. So she writes in her book that she started letting Chris and Tom join her for meals and would expense it all, to the point that JR even asked, may I ask what you're eating for breakfast for $90 every day? And she also takes credit for routinely covering Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, as she says they would travel with her for long stretches at a time so they could get their stuff paid for too, meals, gas, tolls, etc. She says JR approved all of this. Was this commonplace?
What commonplace?
For there to be an expense account for a talent like this, and for them to abuse it and the company know it and be okay with it?
Well, I don't think that the company was okay with it, because I remember it, and I remember JR addressing it. And I think that they may have put a limit on her at some point, because it was getting out of hand. It was getting out of hand. And I bet you that conversation with JR happened verbatim, because he's looking at it and going, what the hell is, who the hell is she buying, Big Shot over here. Hey, I'm buying dinner. I'm buying breakfast.
And it's cool for the executive vice president of talent relations or whatever to pick up a tab for the boys.
Right. That's different.
An on-camera talent just paying for the boys, that's a different thing.
Completely different. Okay. And from a executive standpoint, when we were put in those positions, Vince, it was almost mandatory. You picked up the tab for the crew.
Right.
Whether it be cameramen and cable pullers,
just
or
everybody.
The top talent.
Yeah.
You picked up their tab, because that's what Vince would do. And if we were ever put in that position, that's what we would do. But that wasn't carte blanche for everybody.
Right. She talks about when pairing the LOD happened. So the Legion of Doom are going to come back, and they're going to get a big push at WrestleMania 14, which goes down March 29th, 1998 in Boston. Whose idea was it to put her with LOD? Do you remember?
I want to say it's probably Vince.
What's the thinking there?
The thinking there was to freshen up Legion of Doom and give them a new feel, and they'd had Paul Ellering and they'd had Rocco. They're previous managers.
We'll talk about that another time.
Wow, that's something we'll talk about another time. Okay, cool.
Well, we just get lots of tweets about it, and
yes,
I know we're going to do a Legion of Doom episode.
Yep.
So I just want to talk about the Sunny aspect of that for now, and then we'll come back.
It was just simply to freshen them up and give them a different look.
There's rumors online about her relationship with Animal. She describes the relationship in her book as nothing more than friendly. Have you heard any rumors about this? Do you think
I heard rumors about it, but I don't think there was any more than that.
It was just guys
I think it was guys, easy. You see a guy with a pretty girl.
Hey, let me just run through this. I've just wondered this, and this is not something I thought I was going to ask on air, but I'll just do it. This is not common speak for me. Let me apologize ahead of time. Did the boys consider her a whore based on her behavior with Chris and Sean?
I think that'd be fair to say.
I'm not saying that's a word.
No, I'm saying that'd be fair.
I'm
saying that'd be fair to say.
So
there wasn't a lot of respect for her.
So anybody who is nice to her or rides with her or is polite with her or spends time with her, the natural inclination is going to be, well, she's a whore, so.
the natural inclination is probably there's something going on.
To be clear, I'm not saying that.
And I will. I don't know if there's anything going on or not, but I'll speak for Joe Laurinaitis. The Joe Laurinaitis I know,
right,
is one of these guys that's a really kind guy. That if he sees the person over there being ostracized and kind of being picked on, that Joe would go over and befriend them and help them out.
And then he gets rumors about him in exchange.
He probably gets the stink on him
for being a nice guy.
For being a nice guy, because Joe really is that nice guy. He's the one that tries to look out for everybody.
She writes in her book, when she's first talking about being paired with LOD, that she's going to get new gear made, kind of a new outfit. And she meets with Julie Youngberg, at the time the WWF's head seamstress. She's a name that most fans wouldn't recognize. Do you have any insight or fun stories about Julie Youngberg?
Yeah.
Well, we haven't talked about this, but you just made a really big grin.
Well, no, they used to call Julie and Terry, her sister,
who's still there.
Yeah.
Great lady.
The nuns. Because they would, now, think about this, man. Here are two young ladies that are seamstresses that did stuff. They started out doing stuff for Sean and Bulldog, I think Brett.
Yeah.
And they would travel on their own dime around the country to do outfits for these guys. And they did great work. So, they were making money off of selling the outfits, but a lot of times they had to be there in the towns and stuff to fit them, to
repair,
all the above, man. And they carried all their own stuff, man. They worked their asses off.
Still do.
Yeah. And so they were referred to as the traveling nuns. Vince always called them, the nuns.
Where's that come from?
They were wild. I mean, they would go out and party with everybody. Really nice. I mean, actually really nice, two great gals and very talented. And so they had the rumor and innuendo surrounding her, but as far as I like to use them as an example of somebody that had this little niche and turned it into a hell of a business for themselves. And they worked tirelessly, busting their ass. Their work's excellent.
Yeah, I had never heard any of the rumors or innuendo that you were talking about there. I just knew that
in the early days there were, and again, once they came on full time for WWE as the seamstresses, a lot of that went away. But the rumor, because again, you got two young girls traveling the road, following the wrestlers. Oh, well, they're following the wrestlers around. You know what's going on.
Well, you're insinuating they were rats.
No, I'm
saying that's the perception.
Yeah, that's the perception.
Yeah.
When they're going around and they're working.
Yeah.
They're making a living for themselves, supporting themselves going around by doing outfits for these guys and busting their asses. And to me, they're a hell of a success story, and they're still there, and they're still, I assume, doing great, man. Yeah. Because they're the ones that started it. They were the first seamstresses that WWE ever had on full time, and they're still there.
What would you guess that one of Sean's outfits used to cost?
God, I don't know.
Just freestyle.
Thousands.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, man, I mean, God, the work they put into those.
But the only thing people ever really talk about is, in this regard, is Flair's robes and how much they cost.
Oh, yeah.
But Sean had some pretty elaborate outfits.
Yeah.
Undertaker had some pretty big-time stuff.
Yep. Brett had some nice jackets.
Absolutely.
And nice tights.
Bulldog had the big cape.
Yeah, and you think about the outfits that they wear, the detail that goes into the trunks and the tights and the knee pads and the boot covers and all that stuff.
A lot of people don't know. I know the answer, but a lot of people listening don't. Who pays for that?
The talent does.
See, I think a lot of people have this misconception that the WWF pays for that.
No.
But the boys are giving them cash or check and settling up with these ladies individually.
And it ain't cheap.
No.
So, the seamstresses came in and they did that, and they had a business unto themselves. And I used to love when the guys say, "Oh, man, they're charging too much." Okay, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You don't have to get stuff from them.
Yeah.
And then when they would go out and try and do something else, it would either come back and it would fall apart the first time that they wore it. Or it would be ill-fitting
and they needed them to repair it.
Yeah, exactly. I loved when Creative Services one time, they had someone, I can recreate all those costumes, they called them. Well, a costume in a movie is very well protected and doesn't have to take bumps and the wear and tear. And they said, well, we can do that for a fraction of the price. And they put together some stuff, and it wouldn't. One of the guys, Aldo Montoya, PJ, his first outfit that he was the experiment with this new seamstress person that they had gotten that could do these outfits a fraction of the price that the girls could do. Fell apart first time he wore it.
Really?
And when I say fell apart, I mean fell apart. They said, oh, well, you can't grab on it and pull on it and all that stuff. Of course it's going to fall apart. That's what happens. That's what they do. They're wrestlers. They have to wrestle in it and perform in it every night. And those were, things. But how the hell we get off on the nuns?
Well, I wanted to talk about them.
Well, don't get hot. Look, now you're hot.
I don't know when we'll talk about them again.
Don't know when we'll talk about them again.
Okay, let's talk about drugs. Here we are. She talks
Ain't got none.
Got any extra?
Ain't got none.
Do. She talks about somas in her book, and we've talked about somas here on the show before.
Bad news.
I don't know why it's such a wrestling thing, but it is. She says, I can't believe she does this again, Sean gave her her first pill and her first drink and broke her heart. He's the heartbreak kid.
There you
go. Eventually, she became a Mexican drug mule, and I'm not exaggerating. She lays out exactly how she did it in her book. Let me run through this. You ready for this?
Oh, my. It gets worse, huh?
1,000 Vicodin, 1,000 Percocet, 3,000 Somas, 2,000 Xanax, 2,000 Valium, 500 Rofinol. Am I saying that right?
I don't know.
Testosterone preloaded syringes, vials of Winstrol, and clenbuterol tabs. It was a pill popper's dream. And why did I buy so much, you ask? Well, when the crew got wind of me taking a trip down to Tijuana, a few of them asked me to bring some goodies back. Why not, right? What harm could it do? With that quantity of pills, how could I possibly get them across the border? Well, here's my trick, and I don't recommend this to anyone. Kids, don't try this at home. I would go to Tijuana each month wearing a pair of overalls with lots of pockets, and I'd wear a baseball cap and bring a camera so I look like a complete tourist. I'd go to a few shops and buy 8 or 10 Mexican blankets, a piñata, and a bottle of tequila with the worm in it. The key is to park your car on the U.S. side and walk over the long bridge across the border and then walk back the same way. Why? Because if you drove across the border, there's a 99% chance your car will be completely torn apart and searched when you cross back. When you walk, your bags go through a metal detector, but not your body. So I would layer all these plastic pill bottles between the Mexican blankets, and anything with metal, like syringes and vials, I would put in my pockets of my overalls. So when you walk back through security, they ask you what you need to declare. I acted like a happy tourist, just bringing home blankets for the family and tequila for my dad. And voila, now I'm a pro in the drug trafficking game. Your thoughts?
Kind of sad. That's a shame.
I would go back on the road and distribute the boys' orders, primarily to members of the clique. At a show in Texas, I gave Sean Waltman a bottle of 90 Xanax, 2 milligrams each. By the end of the night, he had 20 left, and he was still standing, albeit barely.
Brutal.
Had you heard about this before? That
No.
she would make runs to Mexico and bring back guys' stuff?
No.
This just seems...
Yeah, it's also strange. I was talking to Ken Hoffman from the Houston Chronicle last night, who reminded me of Dr. Death Steve Williams when Doc was caught coming across the border with what he said essentially 4 CVS's worth of prescription medication. He went down the list, which was something like that, and it's just sad. It really is. I hate to hear that. I didn't know that. I knew that she did them, but...
that she was running orders for people?
Yeah,
wow.
I had no clue. That's scary.
Just, wow.
Yeah, wow.
She describes her first meeting with Sable as not being a good one, and there's lots of talk about her and Sable, so we'll get into it. She claims that Sonny and Marlena had their herself and Marlena had their bags laid out in a dressing room, and on her first night in, Sable just moved all their stuff, which is kind of a big deal. And she writes, I'm not going to go on about Rena, frankly, because she's not worth the energy, but I wanted to put this in the book to clear something up. I didn't like her at all. No one did, really. Over the years, a lot of people have speculated that I didn't like her because I had professional jealousy towards her. That couldn't be further from the truth. She had her place on the roster, and I had mine. I was the girl you wanted to bring home to Mom and marry, the all-American girl next door. She was the one you take to a hotel room that had an hourly rate. This is in her book from this year.
Brutal. You know, when Rena came in, there was a lot of jealousy. And
from her or others? Her being Sonny.
Oh, from her being Sonny. And I would dare say others too, man. You got a beautiful...
And Russo was obsessed with her, based on what I've read.
With Rena?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
I'm not saying that to shit on Vince.
No, I'm not.
He thought, hey, she's a star. Look at her.
She was.
Yeah.
She was. I mean, brother, Sable was, let's go facts are facts, man. She was the hottest thing, and she was outselling Sonny. She did outsell. She blew Sonny out of the water as far as merchandise sales and everything else. So all of a sudden there's competition, and there's newer, hotter babe in town. And you got, the one that's been here now a couple years.
Right.
And she's not showing up on time. She's not coherent.
Oh, yeah.
We're
going to get into all
stuff. And so now you've got the new model here. And Rena's new. She's ready. She's willing to do anything, and she's up. And and by the way, the reaction she gets when she walks out there is
huge.
Yes. And by the way, holy shit, we put a poster of her for sale, and it just blows off the shelves and blows up WWF.com, and
huge.
Rena was hot, man. Rena was she was at the time, Sonny was the first. But man, all of a sudden the newer model came along and was like, ruh-roh. So I would debate the jealousy thing. I think it was pretty much 99.5% jealousy, because
she acts like she being Sonny, acts like she has a really good relationship with Vince McMahon, to the point where even after she's no longer with the company, when Vince has a lawsuit with Sable, which we'll discuss another time, she calls Vince at home to give him some information about Sable. What do you think Vince thinks about Sonny?
Probably, I think he would probably share the same opinion I have. Sad.
Yeah. Let's talk about Luna Vachon. Luna is brought into the company in the middle of all this Sable Sonny stuff, and very early in her tenure, she flips out on Sonny backstage and beats her up pretty good, blooding her knuckles, throwing luggage on her, slinging her Halliburton at her, and Sonny blames it all on Sable. By the end of the night, everything's patched up, Luna's apologized, and supposedly, if you believe Sonny's account, Sable was in her ear, getting her wound up about Sonny, and that's where this fight happens. Do you remember this? The backstage fight between the two?
Yeah.
Can you give us any details?
Well, I just the aftermath was a fired up Luna. And it didn't take a whole lot to get old Gertrude riled up. And she was tougher than 90% of the guys in the locker room. And she didn't care for Sonny. And Sonny, would make it be known, that she was Queen Bee. And from Rena's point of view here, now you also have to understand, it's two different worlds. Sonny grew up wanting to be in the wrestling business, being a fan.
Right.
Rena is a mom who is married to a wrestler, who a promoter says, "God damn, what about you? We could do something with you." And all of a sudden, she's thrown into a business that she doesn't know and or understand. She becomes a huge star. So the person, Rena Mero, was really naive. And she wasn't, to her, it was a business. To her, this was her job, and she was there for her husband. And all of a sudden, she's got a shitload of success. And I think that the feeling was the way that Sonny treated her was unfair. Because she wasn't one of the boys. Mm-hmm. She wasn't just another girl wrestler. And I think that Luna, and this is my opinion, and this is from talking to Luna, was like, you don't treat people like that. And it was Luna's way of standing up for Sable the way that she was being treated by Sonny.
There was a heat situation towards the end of 96. There was apparently some sort of segment written on Raw, and I'll let you kind of poke holes in this. I forget the exact situation, but there was something where it was Mark Merrill wrestling Farouk. I'm going to guess it was like September. And somewhere, the rumor was Sonny was going to beat up Sable, but Mero put his foot down and wouldn't go for it. And that caused even more issues, not only with Sable and Sonny, but then Mero and Sonny. And this became so difficult that you guys just ultimately made the decision to pull her off the road, get rid of this, and just let her do live wire and other stuff. Would that be when you kind of think that some of this stuff started to be like, okay, this is not as workable?
Right, because it's unreasonable. And I can tell you why Mero was uncomfortable with it. He wasn't comfortable with his wife being in that situation. Again, she wasn't a performer.
Right.
She wasn't a wrestler. And Tammy, made it known she didn't like Rena and didn't want to put his wife in a position that she could get hurt.
Right.
He was not comfortable with it. So I don't have a problem with him speaking up about it. And I think that Tammy had kind of worked herself into a shoot there where she's promoted it so much. She wants to beat the shit out of Sable, wants to do this, wants to do that. It's like, okay, well, you know what? No, we're not going to.
Let's jump around and do some more Sable talk. Slammy's 1997. Miss Slammy is won by Sable since she wore the most revealing bikini. And Meltzer wrote at the time, the show seemed to really have two messages be made clear. The Undertaker was winning the title and pushing Sable ahead of Sonny as the woman they're giving the big promotional push to. Absolutely tackiest comment goes to Helmsley for his remark about Sonny, saying she's only good for one thing and that he's heard from his best friend that she isn't even very good at that. You can imagine right now it wouldn't be a wise idea to invite Helmsley and Candido to the same dinner table. It's one thing to be a high schooler and say things like that to your friends, but it's quite another to say it on national television. He supposedly gets a lot of internal heat, he being Helmsley, for these remarks regarding Sonny that were considered out of place. And there was heat on Shawn Michaels that same weekend for doing the click hand signal on WrestleMania. Do you remember this remark?
Well, now that you bring it up, I remember it.
What was when he comes back through, does he get a talking to from Vince or from you or Pat or?
Well, I don't even know. I think that was one that we had where there were banquets and where they were sitting out at the table. So Correct. There was no coming back through.
You eventually run into him though and have a conversation.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Oh, without a doubt.
What does that look
I'm sure
like?
Vince had a conversation with him. I didn't.
Okay.
But it was probably exactly what was said there. It was unprofessional, and it was, you don't do that. That's not the time and place to do that kind of stuff. It's juvenile, and there's no place for it.
The seeds of DX here.
Yeah. But, going back to it, it's funny, the verbiage and narrative. Well, they decided to push Rena. The audience told us they wanted Sable.
Right.
And so, the decision is to go where the audience is telling you they want you to go.
It's interesting to me that may be the sentiment here in America, but in August Meltzer wrote, Gong Magazine put out a special issue this week devoted to full-color shots of the USA women in wrestling, with the cover in the first 15 pages being devoted to Sunny. Sable got 6 pages, Marlena 4, Elizabeth 6, Deborah McMichael 4, Medusa 3, and then he lists everybody else as just getting smaller spreads. Kimberly, Sherry, Woman, Missy Hyatt, Beulah, Francine, etc. When you're saying, and you keep pounding, Sable was the more popular, do you think that was based on actual merchandise reports or just Vince McMahon and or Vince Russo's obsession with Sable?
It's all the above. It's, you listen to the reactions and you listen to the dwindling reactions for Sunny, but you also, when you're looking at merchandise and you've got guys.
Well, now some of that dwindling reaction is based on the fact you got Sable walking around half-ass naked.
Okay.
Well, why did you just have Sunny do that?
We did for years.
No.
And but also at the same time, again, it's new, it's fresh, and when her numbers are exploding, you go with it.
She writes in her book, by 1997, I was beginning to get frustrated with my position in the WWF. At that time, I was pretty much only being used as a model. They would hit my music, and I would walk down the stage and ramp wearing an Undertaker t-shirt and walk back. That's it. I was bored to death.
Yeah.
Why didn't Creative have more for her here? Where people
because you couldn't trust her. You couldn't trust her to go out and do things, and you had to deal with which Sunny is going to show up today.
You couldn't trust her based on her having a bitchy attitude or based on her being a drug addict?
Well, all the above. She was erratic. She was showing up late. She was showing up in different states of mind. And it's like, okay, which Sunny am I going to have today?
A couple quick things to hit on. The WWF held a UK-only pay-per-view around this time. This would have been 97, I'm going to guess September, October. And Shawn was interviewed by Sunny backstage on this show. Do you remember this particular interview? We got a lot of tweets about it. The gist is he's basically fondling her on camera and has a hand up her skirt and says something like, holding 4 titles is pretty impressive, but not as impressive as what I'm holding right now. And then later says, I'm feeling pretty randy tonight. Can you feel it? So they're just... I mean, he's really kind of pushing the envelope here. Do you remember this at all?
Vaguely.
Do you remember going to Japan for Michinoku Pro in October of 97?
Vividly.
You managed The Undertaker, which feels really fucking weird here. But I enjoy the match. It is available on YouTube. You and I actually stumbled across this once, where the dead Hakushi character is buried in the ring, covered in dirt, and brought back to life just to get beat up by The Undertaker.
Right.
Managed by Bruce Prichard, not as Brother Love, just as Bruce Prichard.
Yeah.
Meltzer wrote here that Michinoku Pro spent $60,000 to get The Undertaker and Sunny to this show. Does that sound right to you?
I can specifically say that his numbers are wrong.
Higher or lower?
Doesn't matter. His numbers are wrong.
Michinoku Pro's not in business anymore, are they? What does it matter?
No. It was higher than that.
Higher?
Yes.
There's only 6,000 people there, and they spent more than $60,000.
Yes.
Wow, no wonder they're out of business.
And flew me, Undertaker,
first
Tammy,
class.
And them all over, yes.
Those are $10,000 tickets.
Yes.
In November, the WWF had her just doing, her being Sunny, just doing a lot of referee matches for Mexican mini matches on TV. So it's apparent to me that you guys are really starting to kind of struggle to find stuff for her to do. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I would agree. That was during a time that, I was doing a lot of other stuff, but yeah.
She missed the December pay-per-view in 97 called Degeneration X. She says she was she had injured her foot and that a horse had stepped on it, and that's why she wasn't there.
Oh, or it might have been Terry Funk's horse. It was sick.
In December, that same month, she got a little bit of heat on herself, saying it was a mistake to get rid of Bret Hart and that the WWF should get rid of every wrestler who weighs more than 300 pounds. In January of 98, at the ECW Arena show, she's there with Chris Candido, and she is a big part of a fight that happens at Tony Luke's that a lot of people kind of think she was at the center of, that all stemmed from a double parking deal. And then just more random stuff here. Referee gig at the Rumble in 98. Does a Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday to open a Raw in February. The incident with Luna happens in February. That same month, there's a big to-do with Dennis Coralluzzo where she no-showed an event for him and instead did a gig with ECW up the road. So Dennis complained to the WWF, and they took it up with Heyman, and he says he didn't pressure her to no-show. Do you remember that incident with Coralluzzo?
I don't. I really don't.
In March, she appeared on the ECW pay-per-view in New Jersey without WWF permission. They didn't mind her working house shows, but pay-per-view and TV wouldn't have been approved. Do you remember this kind of working arrangement?
Yeah, I do, and there's just much heat on Paul not letting us know as well.
So then in April of 98, if you're keeping up, that's when they, have her start doing the stuff with LOD. I guess it's March 29th for WrestleMania. But the plan was not to put her on the road full time, just the major shows and whatever house shows are in the Northeast. But this is where the problems start. This is why I'm kind of breaking this down, because in May, she starts missing shows left and right, and it comes out that she is voluntarily taking herself off the road to deal with what she called a personal situation. She was at the next pay-per-view at the end of May, In Your House Over the Edge, but on June 2nd, just a couple days later, she showed up 6 hours late to a TV taping in Rockford, Illinois, and the rumors were abound as to why. Later that month, on the 21st, she missed an autograph signing in Ridgewood, New York, claiming she was in a car wreck. And then she was given an ultimatum on June 26th to either undergo and complete treatment for an alleged substance abuse problem or be terminated. When she went for treatment, she claimed not to have a problem and chose not to undergo the treatment, and then never responded to the WWF's attempts to reach her. It's worth noting that when they gave her the ultimatum, she allegedly blamed Sable being pushed past her and being, quote, saddled with LOD as being part of the problem. So she says, based on Paul Heyman's advice, she just quit answering the phone and quit responding, and they stopped mailing the checks, and she was gone. That's kind of her line, and she says that strategy came from Paul Lee. Meltzer reports that Tammy was fired by the WWF on July 31st for violating her talent contract, and it was based on drugs. The contract was set to expire in late 2001, and we're still in 98 here. But she didn't wait to hear this news before she appeared on the Heatwave pay-per-view with ECW, and she just showed up there, and Meltzer noted it looked like she hadn't slept in days. And she was referred here as Tammy Lynn Sitch. So apparently you guys had worked out some sort of deal where she could work other places, just not use the name Sunny, or do anything that would cause confusion as to present herself as Sunny. And so she was working full-time for ECW and helping promote shows and do first-day ticket sales and all this stuff. And, of course, when you ask her, she says that's not the case. And in her book, she says she helped produce the first-ever ECW pay-per-view, Barely Legal, and she was the one who handled the time cues to make sure that the show finished with their allotted satellite time, and that right after she was invited to have dinner with Chris and Paul Heyman, where they offered her a job to help produce pay-per-view, managing the triple threat, and promoting her merchandise at a much bigger percentage than what she was getting from Vince. And instead of the $100,000 contract that Vince was giving her, she was going to make $120,000 with ECW. And so she went on the next ECW pay-per-view and said, ECW is my new home. And her narrative is Vince saw this pay-per-view, and the next morning she had a fax saying she was released. You were there. Poke holes in what really happened.
Well, you listen to the first part of that when you talk about, okay, she shows up late. She says, car accident, there's no physical damage to her. We didn't get calls before. She shows up 6 hours late. She shows up incoherent. She's missing shots. She's not answering calls. To anybody out there that is a manager in a business or a business owner, what would you do if you had an employee that shows up 6 hours late, that doesn't call you to let you know that they're in a car accident, doesn't return any of your phone calls, shows up incoherent, stops showing up for work? What would you do? You'd fire them. That's what happened. I mean, it's that simple. She make all the excuses that she wants and blame other people, but the simple fact of the matter is that she was acting in an unprofessional way, and she wasn't doing what she was asked to do. She can blame Sable for being more popular than her and selling more shirts and selling more posters and everything else. The simple fact is she ceased being professional.
Right.
And it's like, okay, next.
So this is a weird thing, but I got to ask. The rumor is that the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was that she lied to Linda McMahon about missing dates. Apparently they had a conversation about it, and this is when Linda obviously had a much more active role, allegedly. Tammy says that she miscarried a child, and when Linda, I guess, feels for her, but the company asked for a doctor's excuse, fearing that this was just another excuse like the many we just listed. When Tammy couldn't provide one, she was called in for this face-to-face meeting. Did you ever hear about any sort of miscarriage conversation with Linda? It feels weird to even talk about.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
That rumor's everywhere.
Okay, but this
is the first time you've heard it.
That's the first time, well, when you told me.
Yeah.
You asked me about it the other day when you came across it, and we're like, oh, my God.
Well, I'd heard it before, but when I was compiling my notes here, I just believed that was the case.
Yeah, but I do believe that happened to be okay, and I can see Linda saying, being extremely compassionate, but I can also see her being very compassionate, but with her history, her being Tammy's history, it's like, okay, oh my God, well, let us help you. What doctor did you see? What happened? And can you bring in, all that information, and we'll help you. And when nothing is produced, you become suspect at best.
So let's run through kind of the end of her wrestling stuff, and then we'll circle back for a couple of quick hits, and we'll wrap it up.
Couple of quickies.
Right. It wasn't too long into her ECW run, and these money problems we've all heard about with ECW start to affect her. She says it's great at first, and she even let Paul use her American Express to book these companies' travel, which totaled around $30,000 each month for airfare alone. And then they would issue a reimbursement check, and things were fine. Then she says the check started coming later and later. We've all heard that before. Eventually, she says Paul suspended her and Chris without pay for their pill problems, which she still denies even at this time. And the company allegedly ran up an American Express bill for more than $175,000. And when she tries to earn a living, Kevin Nash calls from WCW and asks about bringing them in. And for 4 weeks in a row, they try to put something together for them to appear on Nitro. And eventually, she says the only way Paul would let them out of their contract is if they would assume all responsibility for that $175,000 American Express bill. So their choices were either to accept that bill and get back to work earning a living, or sit at home drawing no income whatsoever. They accepted the deal and ultimately wound up selling their house to settle with American Express. Had you heard this story before?
No, but it sounds like bullshit to me. I'm sorry. It's just, if somebody used your credit card and they continue to use she said $30,000 a month on average, and they continue to do it. First of all, you can put a stop payment you can stop the credit card, and you can do an investigation with American Express and say someone is using my card without my authorization. But for you to allow it to get to $175,000,
you're in the loop.
You're in the loop, and that's on you.
You might not be in the loop on $30,000 of it. Like maybe they get away with a month.
Maybe they get away with a month.
Yeah.
Maybe they say they're going to pay next month, but you let them get away with the next month. Yeah. Beyond that, it's on you.
This is her burying Paul.
And it's her burying Paul. And then on top of that, to say that, well, we just had to accept it, and that Paul says, well, accept whatever the money is. I just don't see that happening. I don't see it happening either. And I think it's just
this is sad. Just convenient because they had money problems in ECW, and this feels like something they can just tag on him, to me.
Right.
Real quick, let's talk about it because we're going to get questions about it. On the October 8th TNN show for ECW, this is in 1999, they built a 2-part interview with Tammy Sitch, and they promised an interview that would rip the lid off of wrestling regarding the treatment of women. But instead, of course, they just show her in bikini shots and do an interview with her blouse unbuttoned. They talk about her problems with pills and booze, specifically discussing these famous somas, the death of Louis Piccoli and being suicidal after the death of her niece. And they're really milking this, like all wrestling interviews like this, trying to get close-ups of her crying and stuff like that. Even here, though, she's trying to make it like she's on good terms with the WWF and that the release was on good terms. But she promises to change the industry now that she's back on the right track, and Joey Styles is pushing that all of this is behind her now. So the next week, she was on TV getting her bare ass spanked with a paddle. Later that month, on the 23rd, she's found passed out backstage at ECW at the arena, and blames it on accidentally drinking someone's soft drink that had been spiked with GHB. So just hypothetically, if you found yourself in October backstage at an ECW show and you see an open soda can, would you have a swing of that?
No.
A, it's backstage at ECW. B, there might be cigarette butts in there.
And C, it's open. You didn't open it.
That's your open one right there, and I wouldn't drink from it.
Right.
So this is bullshit. Anyway, just wanted to kind of put a bow on that one. Her run from ECW was July of 98 to December of 99. So of course in December, there's lots of stories that WCW wants to sign them, but all these rumors that kind of surround her and Chris keep them from making a deal until March. And then Tammy followed in April. When they get to WCW, Russo's in charge. Candido, of course, had always dreamed of working with Flair, growing up a lifelong wrestling fan. But not long after they're there, a vial of Nubane is discovered in the locker room, and Bischoff asks to see Tammy. He drug tests her and sends her home. She blames Kimberly for this, and Scott Steiner throws a temper tantrum to the point where Kimberly quits the business for good. 3 weeks go by. Tammy never hears the result, eventually storms into Eric's office demanding the results, and he casually mentions they came in a week ago and they were negative. She does not spend very long in WCW. In late 2000, she's hospitalized with pancreatitis and drinking like a gallon of scotch per day. In 2003, her and Chris moved to Puerto Rico for $800 a week, and that eventually dwindles to $200 a week. Finally, they're evicted and living rent-free before she gets frustrated and just comes home and takes a job at a tanning salon. Her weight balloons up to 187 pounds, and she says she's miserable just living in sweatpants, but blamed all this weight gain on the issues with her pancreas and lack of insulin production. Chris died in April of 2005 with pneumonia and a blood clot. It formed in his ankle after a terrible ankle break on a TNA pay-per-view where he was managing the Naturals. After surgery, this clot dislodged and traveled to his heart. Tammy blamed him flying 2 days after surgery, as the high altitudes can cause this clot to accelerate through your system. More TNA stuff here. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but she says his final check from the pay-per-view was supposed to be $1,500, and she claimed that Cockadoodle-Doo man, Terry Taylor, wouldn't change the check to her name or replace the check after Chris died. So even though they shared a joint bank account, the bank needed Chris to endorse the check, and of course that wasn't possible. Had you heard about this before?
No.
She wrote this in her book. She says, if you think about it, Chris lost his life for free. His final match, where he broke his ankle, which was the root of the cause of his death, was literally for nothing. I hated the company after that point. A company I had raved about and put over left and right as the greatest thing on TV had screwed me, and essentially Chris as well. I couldn't believe the gall of these people. But they did send me something during the days of the funeral. A ham. They sent me a ham. A quote-unquote condolences ham. From the home delivery store, Heavenly Hams. Yep, they couldn't send me his last paycheck, but hey, I got a ham. I should be more than pleased and grateful for their thoughtfulness. Maybe if I sliced the ham and sent pieces in envelopes to the credit card companies, they would have accepted that as payment. I could have included a post-it note saying, I'm so sorry I can't send you a check, but please accept this slice of ham as payment for March. That would have worked, right? After all, the TNA office sure as hell thought that sending me a ham would make up for my grief and loss. Oh, I just lost my husband and best friend, but fuck, I got me a ham. Needless to say, I threw the ham out. I don't buy that she threw it away. I can't fathom how insensitive they could be. What? Even after, at the funeral, Dixie Carter pulled me aside and said, if there is anything you need from me or that I can do for you, just call me. Or where the fuck is his last $1,500, bitch? I guess you can say I'm a little bitter, just a little bit. That's what she wrote about this. Have you heard about this condolences, Ham?
No, just now.
Anything you want to say or contribute?
You know, it's sad for somebody that had the love of the business that Chris Candido had. I'll comment on Chris, because all Chris ever wanted to do his whole life was be a wrestler, man. That's all he wanted to do. And he lived it. He loved it. He had some really tough, shitty times in the business. But he persevered, and he busted his ass to do whatever it took, whether it was in front of 20,000 people or 20 people. He gave the same effort and busted his ass every single night. And in my opinion, he deserved more.
Let's talk about Chris.
Overall.
Let's talk about Chris for a minute. When he quits the WWF, we've mentioned this in a prior show, but we've got some details here. I'm going to read you Meltzer's account. I'm going to read you Sonny's account, and then I want yours. Candido quit at the TV tapings because they didn't have a role for him and wanted him to stay on to teach Brackus, Henry, and Johnson, but he felt that at 24 it was too young for him to be out of the ring and teaching talent, so he quit to go to ECW. Candido apparently is also leaving over heat with Shawn Michaels, who apparently would get upset at him using hot moves in prelim matches on house shows, moves that he thought were his domain. So that is Meltzer's account. Here's Sonny's account. Chris quit the company in 1997. He was miserable on the road. He felt like he wasn't working to his strengths, and he wasn't getting the push he deserved. In a fit of anger, he decided to walk up to Vince at a TV taping and tell him he wanted to leave the company. Quote, "Well, Skip, you need to do that in writing," end quote, Vince replied, and walked away from him. Chris, being the hothead that he could be, he became even more furious. He walked up to Jim Cornette, who was now working for the company, and ripped a sheet of paper out of Jim's notebook and wrote, "To Vince, I quit, Chris Candido." Yep, that's what he had the balls to write. So Chris was off the road, and about this time I started working in the studios on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays hosting the TV shows, and Chris helped out Dr. Tom in the training school studio warehouse, teaching a group of new guys who were in developmental contracts. And then, of course, he debuts in the ECW arena, beating Spike Dudley, gets a big ovation, lots of Sonny chants, lots of Skip is dead chants. And he had a pretty decent run in ECW until they're both released and then go to WCW and then what we just ran through. What really happened with his release or his quitting the WWF? Does any of that ring a bell to you?
Well, the simple fact that Chris was upset and frustrated and wanted to quit, that did happen. And you don't go up to Vince at a television taping and say, I want to quit, because he'll just say, okay. And move on.
Because he's busy.
He's busy, and at that point, okay, you want to quit? You're going to come and bother me on a television days to bitch and moan and tell me you quit? Then okay, great. Goodbye. Good riddance. And I don't know about him writing on a piece of paper. I don't know if that happened or if it didn't happen. But I do remember him being frustrated and upset. The training situation was something that we were going to do the training in Stamford, Connecticut. We had Mark Henry.
Right.
We had Brackus. Those were the first two. Tom was, we talked about a lot of different people, and Tom was one of those people that he's the one that eventually got it. And, I may be a little bit prejudiced, but I think Tom's the best trainer ever in the business. I think he's one of, and there's a lot of great trainers, but Tom just has this innate, patience with guys. When in real life, he has no patience at all, but in the ring and in training, he has an ungodly patience and way of training people that is the best, I think, overall. I still have never seen anybody better than him. People say, oh, well, it's nepotism, that's your brother. No, ask him.
It's definitely not nepotism.
Definitely not nepotism, but that's, I just feel that he's the best there is. So that was, Chris would have been a great addition to that and be able to help and have a future in the business, because he was a smaller guy there wasn't, the 205 and there wasn't the cruiserweights and there wasn't an NXT, Chris would have been a guy that would have excelled at NXT.
Isn't it interesting to think, what if he would have taken that job, split up with Sonny, not been on the road?
Oh, my God.
I mean, just think about the timing here.
Yeah.
So that if that would have happened in 97, Shawn was gone in March of 98. She was gone not too much longer after that. He could have went right back on the road, been in his 20s.
Yeah.
And now all these distractions of Shawn and Sonny and all the maybe click stuff he had to deal with, that's all in WCW by then. Man, it could have been, his life could have been a lot different.
Yeah, but he wanted to be a wrestler. He loved
and he wanted
going
to be
out
with
there.
her.
Yeah.
It's fucking sad, man. April of 96, we didn't cover it, so we should cover it. Meltzer writes, lots of things went on when you pack 24 wrestlers and keep them together for a 7-day tour, as you can imagine. Talking about a European tour here. He later says, Sonny left the tour because she was ribbed to death, including someone taking a dump in her food at one point. Apparently, Chris Candido, who didn't leave early, was also being teased and harassed to death by the big boys who acted like school children. There was some sort of romantic triangle, which is nobody's business, except Sonny would have to leave the tour. It becomes business and not personal. Sonny had a lot of heat, so she isn't shy about giving her opinion on the business, where most won't say anything except behind people's backs. A few weeks later, he wrote, her coming back from Europe a few days early was a company decision and not her decision. They were going to send 2 employees back a few days earlier to deliver tapes, and it was supposed to be a ref and a member of the ring crew. At the last minute, Lisa Wolf of Titan Human Resources switched it to the ref, from the ref to Sonny, apparently because Wolf had already heard of the problems in Europe and wanted Sonny out of the situation because the WWF is incredibly over-careful about subjects like sexual harassment. I've also been told the term romantic triangle was not an accurate description of her situation, but she and Skip were heavily rode and ribbed on the tour by the clique.
Yeah, that's the word. I mean, that's what I heard. I mean, it's the ribbing was out of hand. It was bad, and
they're fucking with him about her.
Fucking with him about her, fucking with her.
This is all sex related, right?
No, it's just mean harassment. I mean, it's bullying, I guess would be the best way really to describe it. And the decision was made to remove the object of the majority of the bullying and the object, the subject that was causing all this commotion, and that was her. On every side, she was getting it. That's who they were giving it to, and it was just, it was a bad situation. So somebody had to be removed from that. And
does it become a situation where it's just CYA? Hey, she's the female, and if she's getting harassed, she may sue, so let's bring her home. But Candido's getting harassed too, but hey, he's a dude. He's not going to sue. Fuck him.
Well, he also wasn't bitching and moaning and complaining.
Oh, okay. She was making a spectacle.
She was making a...
He was taking his lumps.
Yes.
I got it.
Chris wasn't bitching about it, and Chris was taking his lumps and privately going through it.
Who took a dump in her food?
I have no idea.
Who are the rumors that took a dump in her food?
I don't know. Probably a lot of possible candidates. I don't know who took a dump in her food.
Any other situations with people taking dumps in her bags?
In her bags?
Yeah.
I think there were a few incidences where she might have had a shitty outcome there.
Who would have done those?
I don't know. I have never seen another human being shit in anyone's food, bags, in anywhere other than a toilet where they're. Are
you going to be at the Conradison all weekend? Let's work that out.
That's okay. Can you shit on command?
No, but I mean, I'll squeeze something out for you. So, 1-2-3 Kid, Sean Waltman is the guy who has a reputation for taking a shit in people's bags. If you believe the online rumors and innuendo, have you heard those rumors?
I've heard those rumors. Yeah. I've never seen Sean do that. I mean, Sean said he's done it. So, I mean, but again, you're asking me if I ever saw someone shit in someone's bag or no, I never have.
Briefly, June of 96, the Body Donnas get a new manager named Cloudy. This is after Sonny has turned against them. So they're going to be a babyface team now, and they bring a guy out and dress him up as a girl. He's a longtime friend of Candido. He wrestled on the indies as Jimmy Shoulders. He wears a wig and wears her old gear and then chases Sonny around. This doesn't last very long. By July, he's already gone, And Meltzer writes, before the match, the Body Donnas did an interview clumsily explaining why Cloudy wasn't there. They've dumped the character. It appears the WWF has gotten sensitive about the charges of too many transvestite / lesbian / pervert type characters, and the Cloudy deal clearly wasn't working out at all.
No.
So what really happened with
What
Cloudy?
really happened is Cloudy was being brought in to be a worker.
Yeah.
And when we got him in the ring to see him work, we brought him in as the manager.
Right.
Okay. And when we got him in, he just didn't have it, man. That's, oh, geez. See, again, that's where they take something and they make something out of nothing. No, not at all. Jimmy Shoulders was brought in, and he was brought in to eventually be a worker. As a way to introduce him.
Whose idea was that?
It's
like a guy dressed him up as a dress. Is that Pat Patterson's idea?
No, it was Vince's idea. But it was one of those situations.
I said that to be funny.
It was one of those situations where, you like how I got that in?
Yeah. It's one of those deals where.
One of those situations. Interchangeable, folks. Candido introduced him, and Candido had ideas or something that we could do with him as our manager to combat Sonny. And
all right, so
okay.
Another quick hit here. Shotgun Saturday Night. Sonny was always a big part of it from the first episode on down through. There we go. That's what I want to talk about. Fondle Me Elmo.
Fondle Me Elmo.
This is December of 96. The hottest toy on the market by a fucking mile is Tickle Me Elmo. People are losing their minds. This maybe doesn't make sense to younger people, but if you remember at the time, this Tickle Me Elmo doll and the hysteria around it and the scarcity of it.
We're selling for $5,000.
This is a $10 toy,
yes.
Maybe $15 toy. People are losing their mind about. And somehow you guys managed to get a full-size Elmo costume and are going to do Sonny naked on Shotgun Saturday Night under the covers with Sonny. Check it out. So she's going to be there, and they're promoting that there's a sex tape now. This is also coming out around the same time that Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee have the world's biggest selling porno ever. So, hey, we can combine two things here. We can take our hot new starlet and push her in this Pam Anderson sex tape kind of role, and we can take this whole craze and hysteria about Tickle Me Elmo and put them together. And the rumors are it's Todd Pettengill.
No, it was Todd Pettengill. Not a rumor. It was Todd Pettengill.
Whose idea is this? Were you shooting this? Were you there?
God, thank God I wasn't there. That was a Vince McMahon production.
Why would you say thank God you weren't there for this, but you were there for Katie Vick?
I don't know. No, this was one of those, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. Kind of like, Dr. Heine. But, it was awful. But it was Todd Pettengill in a giant Tickle Me Elmo suit. And the idea came up when Todd told us he had he had an Elmo suit, not a Tickle Me Elmo, but he had an Elmo suit.
He had one, or he had access to it?
I don't know if he could have, but maybe that he had access to it. I don't know, but he could get a Tickle Me Elmo.
For the purposes of my story,
for purposes of this story, is like, hey, I've got a Tickle Me Elmo suit. Todd, if you're listening, hey man, hats off to you. It was great. What a talented motherfucker he was too. I'm saying that as seriously.
No doubt,
he could do anything. He could do everything.
He did everything.
He could sing. He could dance. He was great. You give him something, he would look at it, got it, and had that classic. FM DJ voice.
Oh, absolutely.
He was tremendous. But yeah, it was Tickle Me Elmo, and yeah, it was horrible.
Some more quick hits. Sonny starts dating a guy in 2006, and that guy helps her get back in shape, down to 133 pounds. You guys bring her back in December of 2007 for the 15th anniversary of Raw, and she looked great. Was there any talk at that point of trying to do something else with her, or was it so fresh? Her last run and those memories so vivid, you're like, or was she just older and we don't want it now? Or
she was older, and it was strictly 15th anniversary. That was it.
Got it. Who makes the call on that? Did you make the call on that?
Well, Vince ultimately made the call on it.
I mean,
we went
picking up the phone.
We went back. No, it might have been, probably Johnny Ace at that time.
She goes in the Hall of Fame in 2011. Some little quick hits from her book here. She wrote in her book that Yokozuna was so fat he couldn't wash his own hair and it smelled like shit and sewage. I need you to shit on this for me. How can you possibly be so fat you can't wash your own hair? Did you hear that Yokozuna's hair smelled like shit and sewage?
No, and Fuji would wash his back and things like that in the shower.
Well, she says that Fuji ribbed her by having her braid his hair, and it smelled like shit because he wasn't able to wash it. Which to me is ridiculous. How are you so fat? You can't. That's not true. That's
not true. No.
Okay. She claims to have
maybe he didn't wash it, but he could. He couldn't wash his backside, and Fuji would do that in the shower.
We're going to talk about that another time.
Well, no, I mean he was a very large man.
Well, a lot of people can't wash their back. You're saying he couldn't wash his asshole?
No.
God damn. We got to talk about this another time. She claims to have created the name Triple H. She says she saw him standing next to Jeff Jarrett, and she says, "Oh, look, Double J and Triple H." And she gives herself credit in the book for naming Triple H.
Okay. I don't know. No, I've never heard that.
Oh, it's legit, kids. Write that down.
We always got Triple H from Sean, so maybe Sean heard it from her. I don't know.
She insinuates a sexual relationship happened with Sable and Ken Shamrock in her book. Have you read this or heard this?
No. Okay.
She also says that Sable and Kimberly were both strippers at the Gold Club in Atlanta. You ever hear that?
No.
We're on a roll.
I'm sorry.
No. Here's the thing. I think they're all bullshit, which is why I'm mentioning it to you. Do you have any fun Paul Bearer stories with her? Paul Bearer has been on record as not liking her.
Paul hated her. Paul absolutely, Paul hated Tammy.
Give me a good one.
Well, they got into a physical confrontation at a TV one time and got into I like to call it a pinch fight.
A pinch fight?
Well, it's kind of like, like two little kids slapping at each other, and, Paul didn't want to hit her, but he didn't want her hitting him. And people got involved and got her the hell out of there. But the funniest thing was we had to bring Paul and Tammy into a meeting. It was me and Vince and Paul and Tammy. And just like, guys, this isn't kindergarten here. We can't have, men and women fighting in the locker rooms, and you guys need to get over your issues. And it was kind of like two 5-year-olds. Well, he said this about me. It's like, well, and it was a very serious situation, yet comical at the same time.
Right.
And at the end of it, they stood up and they apologized and to each other, and they shook hands. And Tammy's real name is Sitch. Her working name was Tammy Fitch.
Right.
Well, Paul gets up at the end of it. He goes and holds his hand out after they've done their apologies, and they go to shake hands, and they shake hands, and Paul goes, "Miss Fitch," and it was. I'm doing everything I can while I'm sitting in there, basically refereeing this meeting with Vince and trying not to laugh.
Sure.
And then that's where we go outside, and Candido was all worked up, wanting to beat Paul Bearer up, and he's threatening everybody. And Paul, of course, is a very popular guy in the locker room, and you would be very hard-pressed to find anybody to say a bad word about Paul Bearer, except probably Tammy. And everybody loves Pooh. And, Chris is now threatening to beat him up, so that's not a good thing, because the guys are like, oh, yeah? You come near Paul Bearer, we'll kill you. So Jerry Briscoe and I are in the hallway, and Chris is all bowed up, wants to do something, and Jerry is like, come on, Chris, it's time to go. You got to go. And so Jerry and I go to basically escort Chris out.
Right.
Like, Tammy's going, you guys are leaving now, and I get the fuck out type thing. And Jerry grabs Chris by the elbow and is escorting him out. Now, if you know Jerry Briscoe's an old hooker from way back, and Jerry is a legit badass at 70-plus years old. I still wouldn't fuck with Jerry Briscoe. And Jerry's walking, and Chris goes, "Goddamn, Jerry, what are you trying to do? Hook me or something?" And Jerry just kind of chuckles in his Jerry Briscoe way and says, "Chris, if I wanted to hook you, you'd be hooked." I'm just like going, oh my God. I'm going from refereeing, a 300-pound man in a black suit and a white face and shit underneath his eyes and a immature little girl to now trying to keep, at the time, Jerry, 50-year-old man who's scary badass and this kid that's about to get his ass whooped by a 50-year-old man with no knees. And I'm going, gee, it's just the range of shit I would go through in a 1 hour period. Sometimes people
paid
wouldn't
you
believe
for that,
and they paid me for this. Yes. Yeah. So, but Chris, if I wanted to hook you, you'd be hooked. Just there's no discussion.
Let's put let's put a bow on the end of this. In 2001, she did Wrestling Vixens, the porno website with Missy Hyatt. Do you remember this?
Do I remember it? No.
You never heard of this?
No, I'm sorry.
Stop reading your goddamn phone and start participating in the fucking podcast. Do you remember the Wrestling
I remember
Vixens?
it. I don't think I ever saw it, no.
Well, nobody else did either. It's just amazing to me this comes 5 years after the Playboy offers her hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And then she's
naked
nude
for a couple $100 probably.
Well, isn't she doing some other thing? Okay, I'm sorry.
In 2012, Sitch was arrested 5 times in a 4-week span for disorderly conduct, 3rd-degree burglary, 3 counts of violating a protective order. She was arrested a 6th time in January 2013. Also for violating a protective order. She served 114 days in jail and was released in May of 2013. While in jail, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer and underwent a hysterectomy and was later diagnosed as cancer-free. She blamed the cervical cancer on HPV. You familiar with that?
I'm familiar with what HPV is, yes.
Well, what Sonny wants, Sonny gets. I don't know that she wanted HPV, but she got it. In 2015, she taped an adult film for Vivid Video.
Oh, folks, we don't mean to laugh. It's...
Well, she pooted in the scene. Cut it out. One of the first times Bruce and I hung out here in Huntsville. I think it was late last year.
It's something you can't unsee, folks.
We were drinking in my bar downstairs, and he said, "Hey man, have you heard about it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Have you seen it?" And I said, "No, but we can get it." And he said, "See, what we ordered, and it was here in a couple of days." I'm like, "No, I think we can." Like, click a
bullshit. You thought you like, well, here it is.
No, yeah, you could just do it right on your phone and then Apple Stream. And the message boards, shout out to my boys over at the Wrestling Observer message boards. Some dude did a phenomenal play-by-play and had a timestamp, and we'll tweet it if you're interested. But she gets very excited.
Hey, Steve Hirsch, if you all of a sudden get a big surge in downloads for this, I want some points on it, man.
Yeah, so there's
Steve Hirsch is a hell of a guy. He's the owner of Vivid.
Brother Love and I watched it together.
Oh man, we did not watch the whole thing.
No, we watched
we watched about 30 seconds of it, and I couldn't take any more.
But what happened in the 30 seconds? It's fucking awesome, dude.
Oh my god. Dude, I've tried to block that from my mind. Go ahead, you tell them.
We just did.
Oh, man.
She pooted and they didn't cut it out. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Oh,
in January 2016, she pled guilty to driving under suspension and then DUI-related charges stemming from 3 separate arrests in May and June of 2015. A judge sentenced her to 90 days in jail. And on August 18th, that's what happened. So she should be out sometime. I'm sure she'll be fucking burying us on Twitter. But you should check out her book. I got all of my research from there. It is available now on Amazon. It's called A Star Shattered, The Rise and Fall of a Wrestling Diva. And it's by Tammy, quote-unquote, Sonny Sitch.
And to be clear, we don't mean to bury her. This is all stuff that she wrote, and it's things that happen, and I hope she gets her life together.
To be fair, I want to state clearly for the record, I was the world's biggest Sonny fan. She was the bee's knees for me as an adolescent from 96 to 99, and then I kind of didn't watch wrestling as much anymore, but Roll Tide. But Hey, if you want to see Sunny at her peak, to me, go watch that free-for-all from SummerSlam 96 with the little bikini deal. Oof, hard to beat, my friend. Now here's another peek behind the curtain. Bruce, you and I don't always tape in person like we are here today. How do we normally tape the show?
By Skype.
Well, speaking of Skype, here's what everybody wants to talk about from her book. I was getting Q&A calls for about 6 months, completely innocent chats, until one night when out of nowhere, a male fan decided to whip it out. Yes, he took out his male reproductive organ. Oh my God, I thought, what in the world is going on? He pretty much just wanted me to look at it and masturbate right there on camera. He whipped it out and started whacking off. OMG, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then a light bulb lit up over my shocked and little confused head. If these guys wanted to look at me and relieve themselves, I can wear a little less and charge a little more. Hell, I can wear a lot less and charge a lot more. So what began as a simply, Q&A session, fully clothed with a fan, turned into an all-out sexual, skin-revealing wank fest for a lot more money. Ha, some guys will do anything. I do joke about it, but honestly, I appreciate every single one of my customers, and I see nothing wrong with that. With what they do or I do, and she's always been a sexual person, a bit of an exhibitionist and a voyeur, and this is another way for her to explore her sexuality. So now, here's where we go. After 2.5 years of Skyping and building up my business, it has become as large as it is today, and I have almost 50 returning customers from all over the world: the U.S., Canada, England, Ireland, Scotland, Germany, Portugal, India, Japan, Australia, and even Iraq. I won't discuss how much money I make by Skyping, but I will say I make more than double what I made with the WWE when I was on the road full time. Plus, I had road expenses then. Now I work out of my home. My bedroom is my office, and my bed is my desk. What could be better? I am my own boss, make my own hours, enjoy what I do, and have the best and easiest job in the world. What could possibly top this? So when Sunny's out of jail, she will be available for Skype sessions again. She will pee on camera for you. That's out there too. She's proud of this. It's not anything to be ashamed of. She's excited about it. She's happy and doing well and making money. So
good for her.
I'm happy for her. What will her legacy in the business be? Will it be jerking off on webcams and putting in porns, or?
I would hope that people would choose to reflect on when she first came in and she was that, most downloaded on pinup on AOL, and that cute little 23-year-old girl that had uncanny charisma. That's what I would hope people would remember. Unfortunately, people will dwell on the negative, and probably that will be in the forefront of their memory.
Do you,
I know you want me. Does that play in the background when she's doing this stuff?
Do you think she's a good person?
I think everybody is a good person somewhere.
I really want to believe that. I was such a fan of her. I really want to believe that. But, man, reading some of this stuff in the book, it's really hard to wrap my head around how it's okay.
It is. And that's, I guess in reading a lot of that, hearing a lot of it, because I haven't read her book. And
let's be clear, too. That's not what someone else said.
That's her.
That's her account.
Her blessing and her, she
and for her to put
blessed
that out about
out.
Sean and Chris, and there's so much stuff there where I'm just like,
yeah, I don't think she is a good person.
That's disappointing.
I truly want to believe that everybody's a good person deep down. I really do. Some
That's
people
tough.
aren't.
It's tough.
Yeah, like the asshole that poisoned dogs this week. I want to kill them. I think that's a bad person. I think she may be in a category of being a bad person.
Well, I was a huge fan of hers, and I hope when, she, comes out of the facility that, man, she hits the reset button on life, and that we get to have a new chapter. And
I hope so.
We get to have another discussion about the re-rise, the rebirth of, because I'd really like for her to get her just due. She did a lot of really cool stuff at the time and was a big part of the wrestling industry. And it is kind of a sad and tragic tale the way it looks like it's going to end right now. And I hope she can, as Kevin Nash would say, pull the nose up.
Right, and she was a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And again, she was never not nice to me. So it's listening to a lot of this stuff. It's like, wow. To me, it's just more sad. And I really hope that she gets her shit together when she comes out and
But this can still be a
success story. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, could have a happy ending. It really can. It's up to her.
You think about, some of the times that, we all know the guys in the business who've had real struggles, but man, they've turned it around and they're in such a good place now. And I hope that we can add her to the list. I'm pulling for her.
Me too.
And I'm also pulling for a good show next week. Bruce, run us through what the topics are going to be next week right here on Something to Wrestle With. We tried to trim this story or this week down, but we were not successful. We got going, we got rolling, and we wound up with another long show for you. But next week, we'll be back. We normally talk about this off air, you and I, and we have a big debate. And we've kind of ran through what our formula for picking these topics are. We want to try to pick one thing that's kind of about the business, kind of behind the scenes, something from the glory days of the 80s, something from the Attitude Era, and maybe something more recent. And sometimes we'll throw a show in there just to kind of switch it up. But this time, we haven't really talked about this at all, and these are Bruce's picks. Fire it down. What's topic number 1?
Well, going through a lot of fan comments on Twitter and what people are looking for, the first one will be the last Nitro, and that is the Nitro from Panama City when WWF bought WCW.
So that's March 2001. It has been on the poll before, but we got lots of tweets about it this week. I don't know what the surge in that was, but I did get it multiple times this week. So the last Nitro is back on the poll. That will be poll topic number 1 from March 2001, the very last WCW Monday Night Nitro from Panama City Beach, and you were there.
I was there, and we talk about the meeting that we had with all of the talent that day. They didn't know whether they had a job, what the hell was going on. Quite frankly, neither did we. But also dealing with all the talent, the matches, and the machinations that took place that weekend, and who knew what, when, and where.
And the industry changed forever that day. What's poll topic number 2?
Well, got a lot on this one as well. No Holds Barred, the match, the movie, Zeus. And one of the things that kind of struck me more than anything is I was reading a lot of the comments that people asking about No Holds Barred was when we did the match, the movie pay-per-view, and it was during Christmas time, and I'll never forget producing the commercials for that.
Give us a little Vince right there.
Well, with Vince, and the line was, no holds barred, the match, the movies, or don't have a Merry Christmas, have a no holds barred Christmas. No holds barred, the match, the movie, December 26th or whatever. And I'm laying this all out to Vince, and Vince's like, okay, I got it, pal. No holds barred, the match, the movie. No, God damn it, I already messed that up.
Well, we'll get it right next week if
there you go.
The poll topic number 2. And if we do cover No Holds Barred, we won't just cover the pay-per-view special. We'll cover Zeus's entire run.
The movie.
And the movie, and the pay-per-view, and the match, and SummerSlam, and all that. So all things Zeus in the WWF is poll topic number 2.
So don't have a
Merry Christmas.
Have a no holds barred Christmas. Okay, sorry.
Topic number 3 on the poll this coming week will be
good, close, dear personal friend, John Bradshaw Layfield.
So we'll talk about all things JBL and the WWF. We'll start with Justin Hawk Bradshaw, and then we'll carry it through JBL and his championship run, I guess a decade ago now. And then we may briefly touch on what he's been doing since. But man, his JBL character really set his career on fire and changed the whole legacy of what his career will be.
And John's a dear friend of mine, and I look at the career of JBL, the character, and it's one I look at with pride because I had a big hand in creating a lot of that and taking that character along through the years in a lot of different incarnations.
Worth mentioning, too, we get lots of requests about more Eddie Guerrero. Here, when we're saying we're talking about JBL, we can't talk about JBL and not talk about Eddie Guerrero. If you want more Eddie Guerrero, vote for this JBL topic. Our last topic next week, number 4. What will it be?
Wow. And I wrote this down as the evolution of the wrestling writer. We'll figure out a way to put it on the poll in 30 characters or less.
The evolution of creative.
The evolution of creative and how it went from an old-time wrestler writing down matches to
what it is now.
What it is now with 30, 60-plus writers and writing by committee and the production that it entails now.
So we'll run through a gauntlet of names there. We'll run through different scenarios, different incarnations, just the booking philosophies about booking a year out, leading to WrestleMania, booking out a month at a time, a quarter at a time, and just how that all changed. So those are your 4 topics. Let's recap. Number 1 real quick was?
The Last Nitro.
Number 2 real quick was?
Now holds by.
All things Zeus. Number 3 was?
John Bradshaw Layfield.
And number 4?
The Evolution of Creative.
So look for that poll, and we're going to put it up on Sunday. It'll be up in time for the WWE pay-per-view TLC. So as you're watching the TLC pay-per-view, you'll be able to vote on this poll. It'll be up through Monday Night Raw and on into the wee hours of Tuesday morning. And you can vote for this poll. It's real simple to do. Just go to @Prichard Show on Twitter. We'd love to have your interactions on Twitter as well. We're both very, very active. He is @Bruce Prichard. I am @Hey It's Conrad. But this poll can only be voted on Twitter. Go to @Prichard Show and throw your vote down, and you'll get to shape the show next week right here on Something to Wrestle With, Bruce Prichard. And we ought to go ahead and give a quick shout out to all the folks we just recently discovered are listening. Shout out to our good buddies over on the SmackDown crew. We especially need to thank Zack Ryder, who sent us a couple of tweets now, maybe 3 or 4 now, about listening to the show. I know that Dolph Ziggler and Kurt Hawkins are also tuning in. We appreciate that. I had an opportunity to go to Raw on Monday night in Charlotte and ran into Byron Saxton and Corey Graves, and those guys were listening. And to my surprise, Mr. Paul Heyman is a big fan of the podcast, and that blew me away. I was such an ECW mark. It blew me away that he listened, and it was nice to hear that so many people are digging it. And I even got a little bit of feedback from our TNA episode. One of a friend I've had who is involved in TNA now for a few years said that he appreciated the TNA show, and a lot of it was very accurate. A little was hurtful because he's there now, but he appreciated the insight, and somebody I've just recently become acquainted with said, wow, we hit it on the head with our TNA episode. So I know you've had some similar interactions with folks who are listening these days.
Oh, yeah. I got a call from Jason Hervey, Jason Hervey was actually an executive producer at TNA with BHE Productions. But Jason called the other day to say hello and wish me a happy Thanksgiving and comment on the show. And Jason was in the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
He was the mean brother. And wonderful guy, but it was nice to talk to him and hear that he was listening, so shout out to him. And the one guy that I always, when we get around to it, we'll get around to it, when we do an XFL show, I always threaten to break my no guest needed rule, and that's Brian Gewirtz, who was the head writer at WWE for many, many years and is now the head of The Rock's production team, as in Dwayne The Rock Johnson. And Brian is a great friend, and he listens to the show religiously, and I want to send a shout-out to Brian and say thank you. Shout-out to The Rock. I hope you're listening, and I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing as well. And Ken Hoffman in Houston, Texas with the Chronicle, longtime fan and good guy to the wrestling community, and just
it's overwhelming.
Humbling.
It's overwhelming. You know, I managed to visit WrestleCade just for a minute with Rick over the weekend in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and multiple people just stopping me. This is a podcast. I'm not posting pictures here. And they would recognize me and just come over and say thank you for the show and tell me what a big fan they are. And we really appreciate, you guys recognizing the work that we're putting into the show. And a special shout out to Sam Roberts. Man, he put our show over so hard.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Not just on the show, on his show, which is great, the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast, but also on Twitter. He's a great follow, tweets about wrestling all the time. He is @NotSam. He should be in your podcast rotation for sure. He put the show over really huge, too. And we really appreciate all the outpouring of support. It just blows me away that people in the business are listening to the podcast and think that what we're doing is good. I mean, I'm a fucking mortgage guy, and your brother Love. How the hell are we over?
Go figure. I told you coming here in Atlanta, I had 2 people in the airport come up and tell me that they listened to the podcast. And I was like, how the hell did you, like you said, we're not on TV. We're not out there. And 2 different people. Well, I was sitting there looking at the monitors at the airport. It was like, some bitch.
How about that?
That blew me away, but that was pretty cool, man.
Well, it feels like a rib, but it's not a rib. And you should go to notarib.com. We really want you to come to our very first live show. We'd love to have you participate in that event for us. And if you're planning a WrestleMania weekend, why wouldn't you do it? You can go ahead and see the NXT show live, and that show is going to be happening on Saturday night. Normally the NXT show's on Friday night. They switched it around this year. The Hall of Fame is going to be on Friday night, and now on Saturday night is the NXT show. And as soon as you finish that NXT show, you can take just a couple of minutes walk right over to back booth and check out the Bruce Prichard show. It's something to wrestle with. We're going to be live and in person. We've got a big plan for that show, something you're not going to want to miss. And you can go ahead and get your tickets right now at notarib.com. Lots of question about what happens if you get VIP. Bruce, what happens if you select the VIP option?
You get to meet Conrad Thompson live and in person, folks. If you get VIP, the VIP is going to allow you early entry to get into the event, and you get to meet both Conrad and myself, get a picture taken with us, and also get autographs and things as well.
Nobody wants my autograph or picture.
Everybody wants your autograph. They get to meet Brother
Love, the former Brother Love, as Bruce Prichard.
Yeah, but you get a premium spot on the floor, and it's going to be a great event. Get your tickets early, and there's only a limited number of the VIP tickets available. So get them early, get there, and come on out and see us. We're looking forward to meet everybody. And you can do that. It's a simple website, notarib.com, and all the ticket information is there, and we're really psyched up about it.
It's worth mentioning we are going to be doing a charity function with this event as well. Details will roll out a little closer as we get there, but everything that Bruce and I do, we're going to try to tie it back to doing something good for somebody. And we try to be the most active podcast around as far as interactive. So if you appreciate that and appreciate that you can kind of vote on the show and shape the show and that we're active with you on Twitter, you want to get one of these VIP opportunities because there will be an interactive element to this show. Let me just go ahead and give you a spoiler there. But if you're going to come to this show, you need to be sporting the right attire, and you need to be sporting one of those pro wrestling tees from Pro Wrestling Tees /Bruce Prichard. Am I right?
ProWrestlingTees.com/Bruce Prichard. You can get all your Bruce Prichard merchandise there, by God, for one great low price. But no, we did great over. I want to thank everybody that got a shirt during November. And you'll be getting those before Christmas from Pro Wrestling Tees. And I'm catching up on phone calls. I've got phone calls to make this weekend. So if you haven't gotten a phone call from me yet, you will. I promise you. And head on over there. If you used to be over, you need a shirt that lets everybody know that you used to be over. Box of Gimmicks made it into the best sellers list on Pro Wrestling Tees. So that was really cool. I thank you guys for that. Rumor and Innuendo. If you believe that there should be no rumor and innuendo in the world, support it with a shirt.
And go ahead and do that right now. Pro Wrestling Tees /Bruce Prichard. Grab yourself a shirt and go to notarib.com and pick up those tickets for the very first live edition of Something to Wrestle With. And next week, don't forget, you get to shape the show. If you haven't already, throw us some follows at Prichard Show. The poll's going up right before the pay-per-view this Sunday. It'll be up till the wee hours of Tuesday. He's on Twitter at Bruce Prichard. I am at Hey It's Conrad. And we'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard.
The world of MLW Radio never stops.